vacate the chamber. Those in the gallery and those on the floor will please rise as we're led in prayer by Pastor Philip Mullins of the Gateway Christian Church in St. Albans, West Virginia. Please remain standing after the prayer as the senator from Mercer leads us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor.
Let's pray. Father, my prayer today is not just for us, but for the people that we lead. Regardless if they are in this chamber, in this building, in this state, or in our homes, you have people in positions to lead for a reason. And in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 12, Paul writes, I give thanks to Christ Jesus our Lord, who has strengthened me because he has considered me faithful, appointing me to the ministry. And while our titles and jobs may differ, our mission as people and individuals remains the same, that we are to tell the great news of Jesus. Thank you for letting us be in a nation where we can pray openly and confidently. Many nations do not have that luxury, and I'm more grateful every day that we do. But let's not take advantage of that simply for ourselves, but rather use that freedom to help others. I pray for knowledge and wisdom over everyone in this Senate room and for their staff and over the individuals here today. I pray that the decisions being made today are filtered through the lens of Scripture and not of ourselves. As Paul writes in Colossians chapter 1, for everything was created by him in heaven and on earth, the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and by him all things are held together. I pray these things in the resurrected name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Senator from Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would all those present, including those in the gallery, join me in a pledge to our great flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading the journal.
West Virginia Legislature, Senate Journal, February 8th, 2023. The Senate met at 11 a.m. Senator Blair, Mr. President, in the chair.
Senior Senator from the 4th requests unanimous consent to further reading the journal is dispensed with and the journal be approved. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Further reading of the journal is dispensed with and the journal is approved. Introduction of guest. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome our honorary pages for the day. Please stand and be recognized as your name is called. As guest is the Senior Senator from Cabell, Carter Woelfel, Maddie Woelfel, Hudson Masavi, Katie Lawson. As guest is the Senator from Lewis, Jamie Meller, Hannah Stump, Dalton Fry, and Peyton Sire. As guests is the Senior Senator from the 5th, Jenna Ramey, Terrence Ramey, and Jason Ritchie. Will the Senate please make them feel very welcome? Further introductions. Senior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it is your honor and mine to introduce our doctor of the day. In the rear of the chamber with us today, we have Dr. Joanna Bailey from Pineville, West Virginia. If she wouldn't mind standing, let the Senate give you a warm welcome.
Further introductions. Senator from Monongalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator from Marion and I are happy to have one of our fire chiefs with us and his wife, who is a nurse. I'd ask Roger and Melissa Channel if they would please stand and the Senate make them welcome. I have a friend, Linda Foster, in the gallery as well. If she will stand and the Senate make her welcome. Another nurse. And finally, the Senator from Marion and I would like to make welcome Sam Cotton, a longtime nurse in Monongalia County, who has been a trauma nurse and served in the military, and we appreciate her being here. Thank you.
Senator from Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we have with us, seated in the President's Gallery, the chaperones for our honorary pages from Gilmer County. Their teachers, Mrs. Ashley Barker and Mr. Jacob Yoakum, if they would please stand And also we have our CEO from Stonewall Jackson Memorial Hospital, Kevin Stonecker. He's here today fighting to build a new hospital in Lewis County. If they would all stand, and the Senate please make them feel welcome.
Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two separate introductions today. Seated in the South Gallery, we have the City of Princeton Fire Department, also on behalf of my senator from Mercer. As I call your name, please stand. We have Captain Charlie Croy, the local president firefighter Alec Gano, and firefighter Ty Mitchell. Senate, please join me and make them welcome. Also, Mr. President, seated in the President's Gallery, we have the West Virginia Nurses for Health Freedom. Senate, please join me and also make them welcome.
Senator from from Logan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in the South Gallery, we have the former Senate President's son, Brent Tomlin. We have Terry Castle, Ray Harrell. They're from Boone Memorial, if the chamber will make them welcome. Also, we have from Logan Regional, Vicki Dimmers, David Brash, and Jeanette Sexton. But, Mr. President, we have an extra special guest in the South Gallery. If she would, they would stand, and then this is my ex-girlfriend. She is now my fiance. On April the 15th, she will no longer be Beth Boblums, as Sophia would say, Baldwin. She's going to be Miss Phillips. If the chamber would make them welcome. Thank you.
Wow. Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, on behalf of the senior senator from the 10th District and the senators from the 11th, I'm doing a special introduction today for Pocahontas Memorial Hospital. And as I call out the names, please stand. Becky Hammer, there in the South Gallery, and then also Susan Wilkins and Lori Rigsby, and then extra special guests. And now I might be able to outdo the senator from Logan. I met this young lady over a bank robbery. And this is my wife. This is Michelle Deed. So everyone, please welcome her.
Top Hat, Senior Senator from the 5th.
I might here, just a second. Mr. President, thank you very much. Today we have with us, seated in the President's Gallery, the chaperone of our honorary pages from Covenant School, Jason Ritchie's father, Mr. Jason Ritchie, Sr. Also, I think it is important to, on behalf of the Senator from Cabell and myself, there's two pages today that bear the name of the senator from Cabell, and it's his grandchildren. And I see their pictures at St. Joe when I go and take my grandson for basketball practice. Their pictures are on the back of it. But if the senator from Cabell could stand up, I'd like to introduce him as the grandfather of the pages.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, we have with us today some physicians from the West Virginia State Medical Association for our Advocacy Day. In attendance with us today, if they wouldn't mind standing, Dr. Amanda Deskins, Anchor Monkany, Anna Raymond, Charles Whitaker, Christopher Good, Jerome Givey, Joe Prudhomme, Jordan Preston, Catherine Nagy, Lisa Costello, Mary Payne, Ron Budwani, and Shirley Whitaker. These folks do a ton for this state, and I just want to say thank you and welcome you to the Senate.
Senator from Marion.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On behalf of the entire Senate, I got a couple introductions that I'd like to make. Today is West Virginia Nurses Association Day, and we all know how much we need our nurses in West Virginia. So I'd like the nurses to stand up and let us give you all a round of applause. All the nurses. And also, Mr. President, I know some introduced their individual fire departments, but there's a lot of professional firefighters roaming the halls today. You know, the folks that run into the fire when we're running out of it. So let's thank them for their service and recognize all the professional firefighters that are here today in the gallery. Thank you all. Stand up and we'll give you a round of applause.
Senator from Harrison.
Mr. President, the senator from Marion stole my thunder, but I have several friends from Clarksburg. If we can give them one more round of applause. Professional firefighters from Clarksburg made it down here today. Normally, we see them on the news in uniforms, and I'm very proud that I get to call several of them friends. So my friends from Clarksburg, if you can stand in the Senate, please make them feel welcome.
Junior Senator from the 7th.
Mr. President, on behalf of the Senator from Logan and myself from Logan Regional Medical Center, please help me in welcoming to the chamber Sarah Pinson, who's in the chamber right up here. Please stand and be recognized.
Are there further introductions? Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. President. If my eyesight doesn't fail me, I believe in the North Gallery we have some nurse practitioner students that are here who were kind enough to let me bend their ear for about a half hour earlier today. If you all would stand and be recognized, please.
Grandfather from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am proud of that. I'll take that any day. On behalf of my senior senator from the 5th, we have here with us today Lisa Chamberlain from Mountain Health and Angie Swearington from St. Mary's Medical Center. Would you stand and be welcome? Give them a round of applause. Thank you. And keeping with the tradition, my better half, Julia, is here. If she would please stand and be welcomed by the Senate, along with the Circuit Clerk of Cabell County, my son Mike, his wife Tracy, they're here with Maddie. Also my daughter-in-law, Stacy Wolfel, is here with Carter. Stacy, would you please stand? As well as Randy Lawson from Milton, Deanna Lawson, they're here with Katie. Would you please stand and the Senate give everybody a welcome? Thank you.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Came to my attention late that my daughter is in the North Gallery up above. If she would stand, and please welcome my daughter, Heather. Thank you.
Are there further introductions? Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the House amended and passed Senate Bill 241 relating to Patient Brokering Act.
Message will be received. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 241.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the Senate concur in House amendments to Senate Bill 241. Is there discussion? Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of the bill was to give the Office of Health Facility Licensure and Certification, also known as OFLAC, the authority to investigate and enforce complaints regarding the Patient Brokering Act. The bill also directs OFLAC to develop a tool to facilitate public complaints about the Act. The House amendment replaces OFLAC with the Office of the Inspector General in the bill. OFLAC is a sub-office within the Office of the Inspector General, so the House amendment would give the main office more flexibility in enforcing the Patient Brokering Act that we passed, and also in the development of a complaint tool. I urge adoption.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 241. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. Question now is on passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk should prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk closed machine. Ascertain the results. On this question, 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House. Communications from the executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 31 relating to permissible expenditures by Water Development Authority from Infrastructure Fund and reports back a committee substitute for same, and Senate Bill 478 relating to Jumpstart Savings Program and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the 2 committee substitutes do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 99 relating to meetings among county boards of education and has amended same and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Amy Ann Grady, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 274, Third Grade Success Act, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute for committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Economic Development has had under consideration Senate Bill 297, Mountain Homes Act, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Chandler Swope, Chair.
Report will be received and under the original double committee reference. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bills 409, 410, 411, 412, 413, 414, 415, 416, 417, and 418, authorizing West Virginia Department of Economic Development to promulgate legislative rule relating to small business innovation research and small business technology transfer matching funds program, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Pensions has had under consideration Senate Bill 452 relating to Emergency Medical Services Retirement System and Senate Bill 458 setting rate of interest on delinquent retirement contribution submissions, and reports the same back with recommendation that they each do pass, but under the original double committee references, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Eric Nelson Jr., Chair.
Report will be received. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the second reference to finance for both Senate Bill 452 and 458 be dispensed with.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Your Committee on Pensions has had under consideration Senate Bill 453, ensuring retirement contributions and delinquency charges of charter school employees be paid upon school closure or by successor, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric Nelson Jr., Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Pensions has had under consideration Senate Bill 474 requiring Municipal Pensions Oversight Board to propose legislative rules, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric Nelson Jr., Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Economic Development has had under consideration Senate Bill 481 extending sunset provision of Upper Kanawha Valley Resiliency and Revitalization Program, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Chandler Swope, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 482 modifying number, allocation, and terms of office of certain judges for next general election, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 561 relating to administration of West Virginia Drinking Water Treatment Revolving Fund Act and reports back to committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Bill Hamilton, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Economic Development has had under consideration Senate Bill 569, Rehabilitation of Blighted Properties Tax Credit Act, and reports the same back with a recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Chandler Swope, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 581, amending provisions of 2023 Farm Bill, and reports back to committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Respectfully submitted, Bill Hamilton, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bills 590 through Senate Bill 599 be considered and introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on our chamber automation system.
Senior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bills 590 through Senate Bills 599 be considered and introduced, read by their titles, referred to the appropriate committees, and shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
There are none.
Motions. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to reconsider the vote by which the Senate passed Senate Bill 424.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves we reconsider the vote by which the Senate passed Senate Bill 424. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. The question now is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to amend the bill on third reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Does the clerk have an amendment?
Yes, sir. Senator Takubo moved to amend the bill on pages 23 and 24 by striking out all of Section 4G.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was a technical error only yesterday. There was a
Senior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was a technical amendment only. There was a table left out. I urge adoption.
Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is adoption of an amendment offered by the Senior Senator from the 17th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be re-engrossed. The question now is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage. I request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting. More than two-thirds of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House. Are there further motions?
No, sir.
Petitions?
There are none.
Unfinished business?
Senate Concurrent Resolution 10, naming the U.S. Army Air Corps Private Albert J. Sutphin Memorial Highway.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 216, requiring all schools to instruct students on Holocaust, other genocides, and financial literacy. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill, the committee substitute for this bill, requires all public schools within West Virginia to give instruction on the Holocaust and other genocides in order to teach students knowledge, identify relevant global actors, inform students of factors that influence genocides, describe the outcomes of genocides, and familiarize students with the history, context, and explanation of the Holocaust and other genocides. This instruction must be given by the end of the 12th grade school year. The bill also requires all public schools located within the state to give instruction on financial literacy by the completion of the 12th grade year. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. President. I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, I stand and I rise in support of this important bill, and I appreciate the Education Chair for bringing it to us. There are, in fact, at this point, what are called Holocaust deniers, people that deny the Holocaust even exists or it occurred. So let me just give us a couple of facts. 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazi Holocaust. Over 250,000 gypsies were murdered. 70,000 gay men were murdered. The Nazis went into hospitals and other facilities and murdered 250,000 disabled people because they were disabled. Just murdered them. 1.8 million Polish, non-military, non-Jews murdered. So I appreciate our students. They're being in a position where it's going to be mandated that they learn these facts and they learn the circumstances around which Hitler and his ilk rose to power. I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close machine ascertain the results on this question. 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 472, creating criminal offense of indecent exposure in front of minors.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our question was consent that the bill over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 495, providing correctional institutions and juvenile facilities video and audio records be confidential. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 495 would amend a single section of the state code, and it amends and reenacts Chapter 15A, Article 4, Section 8A. That section was newly enacted last year. It was in a bill last year that we considered in the Senate, 2022 regular session. Senate Bill 441 last year created that section of code. The purpose of this bill is to correct what I consider to be an error or mistake in the way the bill was finally enacted. With the indulgence of the Senate, I'll share a little bit of the history. We passed a committee substitute out of the Senate to the House last year, made some changes to the introduced bill to correct some errors in it, and the bill was in pretty good shape when it left the Senate last year, Mr. President. It came back to us on the last night of the session, if my memory serves, and it was in the form, it had been amended by the House back to what had been the original introduced version or something very close to it, accordingly not containing the corrections that the Senate made as we had it last year. And we concurred and enacted the bill, and it's been in that form since. So this bill, if enacted, would restore it to the form in which or something pretty close to the form in which this section of code left the West Virginia Senate last year. The bill addresses generally the confidentiality of records necessary for the secure and safe management of inmates and residents committed to state correctional facilities and juvenile facilities. So it's both. And this bill, if enacted, will make it clear that records remain available as consistent with the Freedom of Information Act. That's West Virginia Code 29B, Article 1, and all the sections within it. And that's not all records. There are exemptions to what's freely available under the Freedom of Information Act. But the bill, as it was enacted last year, deleted the reference to the Freedom of Information Act, I would contend by mistake. And so this bill will restore that. It says that records, if they're available under the Freedom of Information Act, they'll remain available. This provides that records will be available in accordance with the discovery provisions of the West Virginia Rules of Civil Procedure and the West Virginia Rules of Criminal Procedure. And there are definitions of what records this refers to. And it allows records to be also provided pursuant to this section. And that relates to the opportunity for people to get records under the provisions delineated in this section, in addition to the Freedom of Information Act and the normal discovery procedures. So, Mr. President, I would urge passage of the bill with apologies to the body for my role in having it enacted for the better part of a year now in what I considered then and consider now to be a defective or insufficient form. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
The question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House. Bills on second reading.
Senate Bill 234, clarifying uniform statewide deadline for electronically submitted voter registration applications. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Revised committee substitute for Senate Bill 250, requiring certain drivers display student driver sign on rear vehicle. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 302, relating to Law Enforcement Safety Act. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 484, clarifying terms and offense of human smuggling. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 490, Patrol Officer Cassie Marie Johnson Memorial Act. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 493, exempting West Virginia veterans from certain fees and charges at state parks. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 515, clarifying deadline to file annual report for companies authorized to do business in West Virginia. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 529, allowing businesses to register as limited liability limited partnerships. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 532, Sex Offender Registration Act. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 533, relating to limitations on motor vehicle used by nonprofit cooperative recycling associations. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Engrossed House Bill 2310, provide the Division of Motor Vehicles authority to develop an antique fleet program so that multiple antique motor vehicles may utilize a single registration plate.
Senior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our question has consent that the bill over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed House Bill 2602, reestablishing certain specialized school service personnel classifications. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be advanced to third reading. Bills on first reading. Senior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our question has consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members. Senator from Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. It has come to my attention that we have, I don't know if many of you may have seen on social media and in the news, Sergeant Nathan Samples, who was a trooper with West Virginia State Police who was suffering from cancer, a rare form of cancer. He passed away this morning. He was a month shy of serving 16 years with the department, and he was only 46 years old. I ask that the Senate please honor his memory with a moment of silence.
Members and guests, please rise. Thank you. Further remarks. Miscellaneous business. Senior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subject to announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Are there announcements?
Lady from 73rd, Douglas Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's also West Virginia Hospital Association Day, and a lot of us have people here from our local hospitals. I see a colleague of mine and others in the North Gallery, Dr. Chris Good from WVU Medicine. But if all the people representing Hospital Day would please stand and the House make them welcome.
Are there further introductions this morning? If not, Chair will ask all members and guests in the galleries to please observe a moment of silence while the Chair recognizes the gentleman at 58th Douglas Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, we received some tragic news in St. Albans last night that our current insurance commissioner, Mr. Alan McVeigh, his wife passed away last night, and we just want everybody here in this gallery to recognize their family with some thoughts and prayers, and if we could give a moment of silence on their behalf, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Chair will ask all members and guests in the galleries to please rise while the House observes a brief moment of silence in honor of the wife of Commissioner McVeigh, Debbie McVeigh. Thank you. All members and guests may be seated. Standing committee reports.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 3210 relating to the performance of installation of propane gas systems, House Bill 3261 relating to social workers' qualifications, House Bill 3311 relating to wine alcohol by volume as compared to beer, and House Bill 3318 relating to location of services provided by the Workforce Development Board as related to the one-stop delivery system, and reports by committee substitutes therefore with the recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 2309 to require the Division of Forestry to create an online renewal process no later than July 1st, 2023, and reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration House Bill 2006 relating to reorganizing the Department of Health and Human Resources and House Bill 3044 relating to the annual fee for limited video lottery terminal permits, and reports by committee substitutes therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration committee substitute for House Bill 2005, establishing the dual enrollment pilot program to be administered by the Higher Education Policy Commission and the Council for Community and Technical College Education in conjunction with the State Board of Education, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 3098 to eliminate the West Virginia General Summative Assessment and replace it with a formative assessment given 3 times a year. House Bill 3113 requiring high school students to complete course of study in personal finance, and reports by committee substitutes therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 3068 to provide debt incentives for STEM teachers, and House Bill 3224 adding West Virginia Junior College to the list of eligible institutions that accept promised scholarship recipients, and reports the same back with recommendation that they each do pass, but that they first be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received. Both bills will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 3084 relating to revising provisions related to public charter schools, and reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Finance.
That report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 3272 relating to the operation of private trust companies in West Virginia, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 2540, Travel Insurance Model Act, House Bill 2605 relating to Good Samaritan Law, House Bill 2817 relating to Public Service Commission jurisdiction over alternative fuel for motor vehicles, House Bill 3122 permitting certain types of rifles using an encapsulated propellant charge that loads from the breech, House Bill 3302 to recognize unborn child as distinct victim in a DUI causing death, and reports by committee substitutes therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 3233 relating generally to uniform and equipment allowances for the National Guard, and reports the same back with amendment with the recommendation that it do pass as amended, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 3254, establishing a state military funeral honor guard in honor of Herschel Woody Williams, known as the Herschel Woody Williams State Military Funeral Honor Guard, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 3151 relating to assisting law enforcement officer in an emergency at the request of a responding officer, House Bill 3152 relating to driving under the influence, and committee substitute for Senate Bill 298 relating to non-federally declared emergencies and non-states of emergency, and reports the same back with the recommendation that they each do pass, but that they first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Fire Departments and Emergency Medical Services has had under consideration House Bill 3056 to change the requirement for an EMS agency vehicle inspection from every year to every 2 years, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure.
Report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure.
Your Committee on Fire Departments and Emergency Medical Services has had under consideration House Bill 2871 relating to awarding the service weapon of a retiring state fire marshal, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but that it first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Fire Departments and Emergency Medical Services has had under consideration Senate Bill 275, adding state fire marshals to statute included with law enforcement and first responders that receive information on school safety requirements, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, but that it first be referred to the Committee on Education.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Education. Are there further standing committee reports? Select committee reports, executive messages.
House Bill 2564, House Bill 2776, and House Bill 2777 were presented to the Governor on February 8, 2023.
Message be received.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2530 and House Bill 2533 were presented to the Governor on February 9, 2023.
That message will also be received. Senate messages.
The Clerk of the Senate announces that the Senate has passed the following bills. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 295, extending time that prescription for spectacles remains valid.
The message be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 299, relating to crime of trespass generally.
The message be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 300, relating to law enforcement training and certification.
That message be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 419, establishing standards for licensure of military-trained applicants.
That message be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security, then the Committee on Government Organization.
Senate Bill 449, updating terms for natural resources police officers' retirement system and retirement systems for charter schools.
The message be received. That bill will be referred to the Committee on Pensions and Retirement, then the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 450, defining medical examination for disability purposes in retirement plans administered by Consolidated Public Retirement Board.
The message be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Pensions and Retirement, then the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 451, relating to teachers' retirement system and teachers' defined contribution retirement system.
The message be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Pensions and Retirement, then the Committee on Finance.
Senate Bill 465, increasing limit on monies placed in counties' rainy day fund.
The message be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Senate Bill 489, requiring Board of Education provide free feminine hygiene products in certain grades.
The message be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Education, then the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 514, clarifying procedure for administrative dissolution of corporations by Secretary of State.
The message be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization. Are there further Senate messages? If not, resolutions.
House Joint Resolution 25, relating to the right to refuse any medical treatment, injection, device, vaccine, or prophylactic.
That resolution will be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources and the Committee on Judiciary. Are there further resolutions, petitions, bills introduced?
House Bill 3354, to authorize municipalities to combine operations with other municipalities and counties to provide governmental services.
The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Motions? Gentleman from 35th, Doug Advance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm asking unanimous consent to have my name removed from House Bill 3130 as a sponsor.
Gentleman from the 35th, Doug Advance, asks unanimous consent to be removed as a co-sponsor on House Bill 3130. Are there objections? Okay, no objections are heard. Gentleman shall be removed. Lady from 36, Douglas Hall is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to have my name removed as co-sponsor from House Bill 3130.
Okay, are there objections? Okay, there are no objections. Lady will be removed. Gentleman to 72nd, Douglas Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek unanimous consent to be added as a sponsor of House Bill 3130.
Gentleman from the 72nd asks unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor to House Bill 3130. Are there objections? Okay, the gentleman's name will be added as a co-sponsor to House Bill 3130. Gentleman 44th, Doug Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask unanimous consent for my name to be removed as a sponsor from 3130.
Okay, gentleman 44th asks unanimous consent to be removed as co-sponsor on House Bill 3130. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Gentleman's name will be removed as a co-sponsor on House Bill 3130. Are there other motions this morning? Okay, if not, any unfinished business this morning? Bill's on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2002 relating to providing support for families.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman to 12th, Doug Chris, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. This bill would provide certain tax benefits, services, and pregnancy support for families. This bill would amend to increase current law one-time $4,000 tax refundable income tax credit for adoptive parents for those non-family children whose age at adoption is under the age of 18 years to $5,000. It would also create a new section that would mandate that an adoptive child is eligible for an early intervention services provided for families to which may be offered by the Department of Health and Human Resources, and also would create and establish a new West Virginia Mothers and Babies Pregnancy Support Program under the Bureau of Public Health. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman from the 15th, Doug Keaton, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to speak very briefly in support of passage of the bill, I want to particularly highlight the provisions explained by the gentleman related to pregnancy resource centers and the Mothers and Baby Support Program. These organizations do a lot of tremendous work. They do a lot of it very quietly. Many of you have pregnancy resource centers in your communities that you may not be aware of. There are those that even the state association aren't aware of, right? That these are organizations that are people out of the kindness of their heart provide loving and life-affirming care in big ways and small to women in oftentimes difficult circumstances. I urge passage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 79th, Doug Hanson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill's got good and bad in it. The adoption tax credit, the increase in the adoption tax credit is something that I wholeheartedly support. But what I do have an issue with, what I object to, and the reason why I'm going to vote no on this bill, is sending taxpayer dollars to these pregnancy help organizations. Organizations that are not required to uphold medical privacy rules, medical ethics rules. Organizations that are agenda-driven. Read the bill. I'm sure you have. It's very specific. The agenda is to prevent abortions from occurring in the state of West Virginia, to make sure abortions are not performed. It's an agenda that will result in women giving birth when it's not medically appropriate, or when they should fall under one of the very narrow exceptions written into the abortion ban passed by this body just a few months ago. You know, there are women who find out that they're pregnant and need access to a full range of advice, not just based on people's religious belief or based on people's agenda, but based on medicine, based on evidence-based medicine. And I'd like to think that one of the reasons why the abortion ban that passed a few months ago includes those narrow exceptions is because there's broad recognition that there are situations where abortions are needed and necessary and appropriate. And one of the impacts of forbidding an organization from even mentioning the word abortion or providing referrals for abortion is that people, women, pregnant women, will not receive the medical care that they need. Now, there are legitimate family planning clinics in West Virginia that don't have adequate funding, and it's a shame that this bill is not directed toward those. It's a shame that the bill is not helping to address the maternity and healthcare deserts in so many locations across the state of West Virginia. So again, Mr. Speaker, I oppose this bill because it diverts state dollars to push an anti-abortion, anti-contraception agenda. This bill diverts state dollars to these facilities that do not follow evidence-based healthcare standards and will hurt women. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 51st, Douglas Fass is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman yield for a question or two?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So for existing crisis pregnancy centers that may or may not want to participate with the funding mechanisms in this bill, does this bill allow an option as to whether they participate, or would they be mandatory to be involved in this program?
There's no mandates involved.
Very good. Okay, so so then they have the option.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is there debate on this bill? Lady in the 81st, Douglas Walker is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman yield for a few questions?
Yes, ma'am.
So on page 2 of the bill, we speak about abortion industry organizations. Are abortions banned in West Virginia?
Yes.
Do we have exceptions to that ban?
There are, but I can't list I don't have the detail, ma'am.
You know that was going to be my next question. I
yes.
appreciate you, my friend.
I've known you long enough, I think I can anticipate.
That makes me feel good.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me how many abortion industry organizations we have in West Virginia?
No, ma'am, I cannot.
Can you give me an example of what an abortion industry organization may look like?
No, ma'am, I cannot.
Okay. Is this legislation targeting any particular organization?
Not that I know of.
Is it illegal for a resident of West Virginia to go out of state to have an abortion?
No, ma'am.
With the exceptions to abortions, where are these abortions performed or prescribed?
At hospitals, ma'am.
So are these providers considered abortion industry organizations?
I don't believe so.
So going back to the abortion industry organizations, is it defined how they encourage an abortion?
It's not described in the bill.
So could you give me an example?
I cannot.
So how does an organization who is a abortion industry organization promote an abortion when it's illegal in the state?
I can't give you an answer for that either. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's okay, sir. Just be patient with me.
I understand.
Page 3. Now we're speaking about pregnancy help organizations. How many pregnancy help organizations do we have in West Virginia?
I do not know. I'm not aware of how many there are here.
So I know that question was posed in committee. Do you know how many of those pregnancy help organizations are medical?
No, ma'am, and those questions were probably offered in health, and this bill came to finance, and I don't believe those questions were asked in finance.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, can I ask for the Chair of Health to a few questions?
Yields, yes, you may.
Of course. Thank you, Chairwoman. How many pregnancy help organizations do we have in West Virginia?
I can't give you a number, but there are quite a few.
Yes, ma'am. Do you remember in committee how many they told us were medical pregnancy help organizations?
I don't know how many were medical.
Okay. Do you know if the pregnancy help organizations are just licensed personnel?
It depends on if they provide the medical services or not. If they provide medical services, they do have licensed personnel.
Do they have paid staff?
I don't know if they're paid or volunteer. That would be up to the organization.
And do you know if some of them are volunteer based?
I don't know.
Okay. In the definition on page 3, line 7, it says is a range of service to pregnant women. Is that defined anywhere, that range of service?
It is not defined, but those things would include things such as ultrasounds, sexually transmitted disease testing, prenatal care.
So that would be for the medical pregnancy help centers. What about for those who are non-medical? What would be their range of service?
Social services, just like any other organization. If you need help getting to an appointment, or you need clothing, or you need to arrange things for items to take care of your baby when they come.
Okay. Does the medical pregnancy help organizations bill insurance?
I'm not aware.
Are some of the pregnancy help organizations religious-based?
I don't know.
Are any of those pregnancy help organizations connected to any places of worship, a church, a temple, or a mosque?
I don't know, but there are several of them here today, and I will send them to your office.
Please, I welcome them. In the pregnancy help organizations, do we know whether they are medical or non-medical, if they abide by HIPAA and PHI?
They do, yes.
Okay.
If they're medical, they do.
Yes, ma'am. And so when we go down on page number 3, and I'm sorry, we may have to go back to the chairman of finance, but do we know where the pregnancy help orgs are currently getting their funding? No.
Donations.
Donations, okay. Do they have to and so even if they are non-medical, under this piece of legislation, they can still receive the funding?
Yes.
Correct. And if the organization says the word abortion in their marketing, they can't apply for funding, correct?
That is correct. It would probably be contradictory to the intent of the bill.
Yes, ma'am. And so on page number 4, we speak about management agencies. Do they only have to be based in West Virginia, or is this open to all?
It does not say it has to be West Virginia.
Okay. And so if those management agencies was previously affiliated or hold a relationship with an abortion industry organization that we can't name, then they cannot be the management agency, correct?
Did you say formerly affiliated with?
Yes, if they were formerly affiliated
But not
with.
affiliated with now?
Not affiliated with now.
I don't think that is provided for in the bill.
Okay. So when we go down to lines 15 and 16, in maintaining policies and processes of the pregnancy help organizations, the volunteers and paid staff, would they be considered, and I may not say this right, mandated reporters?
It does say that they must maintain policies for child abuse reporting. It does say that in the legislation.
Okay. And then on lines 20 through 22, when we start speaking about the fee or service schedule, is this only for the medical pregnancy help orgs or for all of them?
It is for both.
Okay. And we're almost done.
I got all day.
Thank you. Do these pregnancy help orgs have to report to legislation about how they're spending the funding? Do we have any government oversight?
It's not in the bill. It's not specified in there.
Yes, ma'am. And does this bill have a fiscal note?
I don't think so. I think it creates a fund. Let me look. And then I think through the budget they can determine if they want to fund or not. It'll be funded in the budget if chosen to be.
So it would be a line item in the budget if it's chosen to be
There'll be a
funded?
line item, and it could say 0, or it could say whatever the body decides to fund it.
Yes, ma'am. So right now, we don't have a specific amount in that line item.
We do not.
Okay. Thank you, Madam
you.
Chair. I appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, can I speak to the bill?
Lady is recognized.
Thank you. We have some very good things in this bill by increasing the adoption credit. Children are hurting here in the state. We have some phenomenal people that are stepping up to provide homes and stability and a future and culture and traditions to these children who may not be wanted, but maybe that biological parent just can't take care of them. And we want that. We want that good. And then in the bill, we have a definition that I don't quite understand about the abortion industry organizations. When this body and the body across the rotunda banned abortions with a few exceptions, and that reproductive health care service is provided in hospitals. So what are we doing if we send someone to the hospital to have an abortion and that person says, wait a minute, maybe I need to go get a second opinion. But now we've used the word abortion, and so now is this hospital liable? So let's go a little bit further. We have banned abortions, but we also put stigmas and biases against certain organizations. We have welcomed and stood up and clapped for the pregnancy help centers because they are providing a service for future parents and future little mountaineers. But when we say orgs like Planned Parenthood or West Virginia Free, we start getting hot under the collar because we don't want to say the other things that those orgs also give us the ability to, and that's comprehensive sexual education, mammograms, pap smears, prostate. So where do we lie? We're giving funding of no amount in the budget to a medical or non-medical, religious or non-religious based health center. And there's a lot of questions that can't be answered, and there's a lot of assumptions. I don't want to make an assumption. I want to make sure with the maternal mortality and morbidity rate we have in West Virginia, that the person carrying the baby and the baby will have the best outcomes. Because as my good friend from the 85th said, we're not doing and we're not placing the safety nets for a success. We're still having premature babies. DHHR now is saying that they're going to only approve Similac. It's on their website. We're going to put in place what those trainings ought to be, but it don't mean that they will be. And then we use a blanket that not every pregnancy help organization has to apply for this funding because they have the donations. And I appreciate that also. So I wonder, in the sake of freedom, when will I not be able to say the word abortion in this body, as I am an abortion patient, and I am a mother, and I am one who cares. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman, the 80th, Williams is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would my friend, the Chair Lady of Health, yield for just a couple questions?
Does lady yield for a question? Yes, lady does yield.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Under the ban that was passed over the summer, does that still give permission to medical entities to perform an abortion in the case of saving the mother's life? Is that still allowed in West Virginia?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking at the end of the page 1, line 2, where it defines abortion industry organization. That means any organization that performs, prescribes, refers for, encourages, or promotes abortion. So there where it says prescribes abortion, could that, would a hospital be included under that definition of an abortion industry organization, since they are still allowed to provide this care to women?
I don't think they fall under the definition of a pregnancy help center in this.
Okay, maybe not a pregnancy help center, but an abortion industry organization means any organization that performs, prescribes, refers, so certainly they would fall under that definition, right?
It sounds like if they need to do abortions, yes.
Okay, and so then I'm going down at the end of page 3, the beginning of page 3, section B, the management agency may not perform, prescribe, or refer for, advocate for, or encourage abortion. So thinking here on refer for, would that prevent a management agency from sending someone to a hospital to provide care, because that hospital may also perform the occasional abortion to save the mother's life?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Question again is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Does the lady wish to close debate on the bill? Or gentleman from 12th wish to close debate on the bill? Gentleman from 45th, Douglas Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in proud support of this bill, this legislation. This time last year, I was, like everyone else in this chamber, running for office. Went door to door, knocked on thousands of doors. Two questions I always got. What's your stance on Second Amendment? And what's your stance on life? And I was proud to tell them that I was pro-life. So I do support this legislation. I think this does much to advance the cause, the culture of life, to support the culture of life in our state. It's needed. We are a pro-life state. My constituents certainly are in a pro-life constituency. My district is a pro-life district. So I proudly support this legislation. I would urge my colleagues to support this legislation. It's needed. We should do it and help those that we want to help, that we can help. And this legislation does a whole lot to do just that. So again, I just urge passage, and thank you.
Again, gentlemen, 12th wish to close debate on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a unique opportunity to help adoptive families by raising their one-time tax credit from $4,000 to $5,000. And that goes a long way towards helping the expenses involved through adoption. Now, I have family that adopted 2 children, and their costs were obviously way more than the $5,000 because he used a private adoption firm. So I believe that this will help and encourage families to take that step to enjoy adopted children. I enjoy my niece and my nephew tremendously. They're a lot of fun to be around. They've got great attitude, like the rest of my family now, and I appreciate being able to help others to enjoy that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 88 ayes, 8 nays, and 4 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2002 relating to providing support for families.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Chris moves to amend the title.
The question is on the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of adoption of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2346 declaring a shortage of qualified bus operators and allowing retired bus operators to accept employment.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman from the 43rd, Delegate Tony is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill amends provisions of the West Virginia Code of the Teachers Retirement System. Current law limits the number of days TERS employees may work as a bus operator, a maximum of 140. This bill provides findings that if there is a shortage of qualified bus operators, that is compelled state interest in use of retired bus operators to provide service as substitute bus operators in the area of critical need. The process requires the County Board of Education to adopt a policy recommended by the county superintendent to address a critical need and shortage for substitute bus operator. The policy is then submitted to the State Board of Education for approval. Upon approval, the county is to renew this policy annually if it wishes to so employ substitute bus operators. Prior to employment as a substitute bus operator, the county superintendent is to provide an affidavit regarding the situation of the county board, then submits this to the CPRB. This amendment also provides expiration date of 6/30/2028. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker, on Irish passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There were 94 ayes, 0 nays, and 6 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2346, declaring a shortage of qualified bus operators and allowing retired bus operators to accept employment.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2548, relating to temporary identification cards for released inmates.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 8th, Doug Kelly, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill clarifies that identification card that is issued to the inmates upon release is at no charge to the inmate, and it also extends the validity of the identification card from 90 days to 180 days. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 93 ayes, 1 nay, and 6 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2548, relating to temporary identification cards for released inmates.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2599, creating the Utility Pole Rights-of-Way and Easement Mapping Initiative.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 22nd, Doug Linville, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2599 adds a new section of code to the Code of West Virginia to create the Utility Pole Rights-of-Way and Easement Mapping Initiative. This would require utility pole owners to provide information to the Department of Economic Development to map the location of all poles and requires the Department of Economic Development to create those maps with specific information about those utility poles. Notably, and as further clarified in an amendment adopted yesterday, this legislation does not create a new requirement to generate information or engineering reports or impose any new cost on a utility pole owner. The department must maintain confidentiality of information about electric facilities connected to these utility poles. However, it allows the Department of Economic Development to provide information to parties who demonstrate the need for the information to determine feasibility of projects. A confidentiality agreement is required of any requester of the reported information. If a utility pole owner provides information directly to a telecommunications entity and certifies that the owner has produced and made available to attachers such a map as described in this section, with at least the same information included and without cost to access, then the pole owner shall not be required to share this information with the state, and the department shall not be required to map those utility poles. That is a summary of the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I do urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Gentleman from the 100th, Doug Rittenhouse, is recognized. Question. Understood. Question is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Okay, if not, those in favor of passing the bill vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 87 ayes, 9 nays, and 4 members absent. The majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2599, creating the Utility Pole Rights-of-Way and Easement Mapping Initiative.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House and the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2762, allowing variance in state fire code for certain buildings used solely for emergency equipment storage.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman the first, Doug McGeehan, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill, House Bill 2762, is to require the State Fire Commission to propose rules providing that buildings commencing construction after July 1st of this year, housing emergency fire, rescue, or ambulance services shall be protected throughout by approved automatic sprinkler systems and providing an exemption. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 95 ayes, 1 nay, and 4 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2762, allowing variance in state fire code for certain buildings used solely for emergency equipment storage.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Phillips moves to amend the title.
The question is on the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of adoption of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2845, relating to removing expired provisions from the code.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, lady from the 73rd, Douglas Summers, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of committee substitute for House Bill 2845 is to repeal an expired section of the code. The section being repealed pertained to participation in a federal grant program that is no longer funded. I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2845, relating to removing expired provisions from the code.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2967, expediting license applications for active military members and veterans and their spouses.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, chair recognize the gentleman first. Doug McGinn to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill, House Bill 2967, is to provide for the expedited processing of professional or trade license applications for service members, veterans, and their spouses when the applicant is licensed in good standing in another jurisdiction. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2967, expediting license applications for active military members and veterans and their spouses.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2970, creating the equitable right to expungement.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 55th, Doug Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The committee substitute for House Bill 2970 deals with expungement. In the current law, the expungement we've dealt with in the past, there was a gap that we're trying to address with the bill before you right now. The current law provides that charges dismissed pursuant to a plea agreement are not subject to expungement. This bill allows eligible criminal charges that have been dismissed pursuant to successful completion of a pretrial diversion or a deferred adjudication to now be expunged pursuant to a filed petition by the defendant. The bill clears up a gap in the law because technically pretrial diversions and deferred adjudications are agreements between the state, the defendant, and the court relating to resolving criminal charges in exchange for compliance with required terms and conditions. The bill does exempt certain charges from being expunged. Those include domestic battery, domestic assault, assault when the victim is a family or household member, battery when the victim is a family or household member. Certain sexual offenses are exempt from that, and also child abuse are also exempt from expungement in these cases before you. Mr. Speaker, that's a summarization of the bill. I urge passage. Happy to take any questions.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2970, creating the equitable right to expungement.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3036, increasing the number of districts and the limit on approved costs under the Build WV Act.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman 87, Doug Howell, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill would remove the limit on the number of certified Build West Virginia districts that may be certified by the Secretaries of the Department of Economic Development, Commerce, and Tourism in the state to qualify for the benefits under the Build West Virginia Act, which was enacted last year. The bill also raises the limit from $40 million to $150 million in any fiscal year. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? Okay, if not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 80 ayes, 15 nays, 5 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3036, increasing the number of districts and the limit on approved costs under the Build WV Act.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3077, relating to making the use of the multi-state real-time tracking system permanent.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, lady from the 49th, Doug Tully, to explain the bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of the committee substitute for House Bill 3077 is to repeal the section of code that establishes the termination date for the multi-state real-time tracking system, which is currently set to expire on June 30th, 2023. That is the purpose of the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there were 95 ayes, 0 nays, and 5 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3077, relating to making the use of the multi-state real-time tracking system permanent.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman to 61st.
Mr. Speaker, I move the bill be effective from passage.
Gentleman to 61st moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of that motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there were 95 ayes, 0 nays, and 5 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3130, creating the Coalfields Energy Research and Economic Development Authority.
Gentleman to 61st.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that action be postponed 1 day.
Are there objections? No objections are heard, and action will be postponed 1 day on committee substitute for House Bill 3130. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3164, to extend the termination date of the West Virginia Advisory Council on Rare Diseases due to a delay in beginning its duties.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, chair recognizes lady from 73rd, Douglas Summers, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to extend the termination date of the West Virginia Advisory Council on Rare Diseases to June 30th, 2025 because of a delay in beginning its duties. Thank you. I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there were 93 ayes, 2 nays, and 5 members absent. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3164 to extend the termination date of the West Virginia Advisory Council on Rare Diseases due to a delay in beginning its duties.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman from the 61st.
Mr. Speaker, I move the bill be made effective from passage.
Gentleman from the 61st moves that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of that motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There were 94 ayes, 2 nays, and 4 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3191 relating to certain facilities operated by the state government to obtain a license.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, lady from the 73rd to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill requires that state-owned and operated hospitals fall under the state licensure process. This bill would clarify that Sharp and Bateman Hospital are required to obtain a license. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 93 ayes, 2 nays, and 5 members absent. The majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3191 relating to certain facilities operated by the state government to obtain a license.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Summers moves to amend the title.
The question is on the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of adoption of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman from the 61st.
Speaker, I move the bill be made effective from passage.
Gentleman from the 61st moves that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of that motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 92 ayes, 2 nays, and 6 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Are there other bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2218, Distracted Driving Act.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2621 relating generally to bail bondsmen.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Are there amendments? Okay, gentleman 61st.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that action be postponed 1 day.
On committee substitute for House Bill 2621. Okay, are there objections to postponing action 1 day on committee substitute for House Bill 2621? Okay, no objections are heard. We'll postpone action 1 day on that bill. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2832, clarifying appropriate and inappropriate duties for school counselors while also providing the definition of a school counselor.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Holstein moves to amend the bill on page 2, Section 18B, line 31, after the word student by inserting the word academic.
Okay, the question is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Chair recognizes Chairman 32nd Delegate Holstein to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This simply just adds more clarity to the provisions listed there to say that, you know, counselors can keep notes and other records relating to students, but don't have to deal with academic records. So it's just intended to provide a little bit of clarity and make sure that counselors can do their job. Thank you.
The question again is on the amendment read by the clerk. Is there debate on this amendment? Gentleman 38th, Delegate Ellington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would urge passage of this amendment to ensure that there are no unintended consequences that come from not being specific about which types of records we are referencing. So I would concur.
Again, the question is on the amendment read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment? Okay, if not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. Okay, the ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Clerk will please report the next amendment. Are there other amendments?
Delegate Young moves to amend the bill on page 2, section 18B, line 33, by striking out subdivision 9 in its entirety and renumbering the subsequent subdivisions accordingly.
The question is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Okay, are there objections to having that amendment withdrawn? Okay, if not, that amendment will be withdrawn. Are there other amendments to the bill? Okay, if not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 2882, making a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Economic Development.
House, be at ease just a moment. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's return to further consideration of committee substitute for House Bill 2832. Chair has advised we do have another amendment to the bill. So at this time, the clerk will please read the amendment.
Delegate Walker moves to amend the bill on page 2, section 18B, line 33, by striking out subdivision 9 in its entirety and renumbering the subsequent subdivisions accordingly.
Okay, the question is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Shall recognize the sponsor, Lady 81st, to explain the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, when I spoke to some counselors across the state, for them not to supervise classrooms or common areas, most of the time when a child goes into a counselor and speaks to them and there is an issue with anxiety, maybe at recess on the playground or even in the cafeteria or any other common area that is within the school and sometimes within certain classrooms. That child does not have an IEP or a 504 or pending even an IEP or 504. This counselor may not be able to bring in a group of students to have a talk so we can work on social skills because of this. Now, I understand the intent of number 9 is to make sure that a principal doesn't come in if we don't have enough teachers to do duty in a classroom or any common areas such as a cafeteria or even a playground. But what I want the body to understand is that when we speak about school counselors, we're speaking about elementary, middle, and high school students. And it's oftentimes that at an elementary level, a student may not have an IEP or 504, but still going through some behavioral problems. Let's also understand that we have a foster care system. And even if that child is not in a foster care system, but may be raised by a grand family, not just a grandparent, but maybe a great-grandparent, how that person raised their children may be different. If that is the only child in that home for that grandparent or that great-grandparent, there may be some social delays in that child. So this is not to change the intent of the bill, but I had to bring it forth with the concerns of the counselors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, the question again is on the amendment read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment read by the clerk? Gentleman from the 38th, Douglas Ellington, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Although I understand the intent that the gentlelady has, I think this does defeat the purpose of what the bill is. The bill pretty much says that we want to direct 80% of the council's time toward counseling and the other 20% just to administrative duties that are related to the counseling. Unfortunately, sometimes administrators take these counselors and put them in a room where someone may be out, where they have to supervise the room, and their time is taken for that. The current bill does not preclude a counselor from observing or counseling a small group or individual kids in a classroom or in a common area. So I think it would defeat the purpose to remove that from the bill. I think we should keep it where it is. That way it's not abused, and it still allows them to do, the council to observe those students and work with them. So I would urge rejection of the lady's amendment.
Question is still on the amendment read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment read by the clerk? Okay, if not, Chair recognizes the lady from the 81st for opportunity to close debate on the amendment. Okay, if not, the question then is, shall the amendment be adopted? Those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Aye. Those opposed will please say no. No. Okay, the noes appear to have it. Okay, the noes have it. Chair declares that amendment lost. Are there other amendments to the bill? Okay, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Clerk will please report the next bill on second reading.
House Bill 2882, making a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Economic Development.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Delegate McGeehan moves to amend the bill on page 2, line 22, by striking $115 million and inserting in lieu thereof $10 million, and on page 2, line 26, by striking $127,147,273 and inserting in lieu thereof $22,147,273, and on page 3, line 47, by striking from the above appropriation for directed transfer surplus, Fund 0256, appropriation 33700099, $105 million shall be transferred to the Economic Development Project Fund, Fund 349069, and $10 million shall be transferred to the Broadband Development Fund, Fund 3034, and inserting in lieu thereof from the above appropriation for directed transfer surplus, Fund 0256, appropriation 33700099, $10 million shall be transferred to the Broadband Development Fund, Fund 3034.
Okay, the question is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Chair will recognize the sponsor, Douglas McGeehan, from the first to explain the amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. That was a sort of a long-winded mathematical explanation. Since it is a supplemental, really just to simplify it is I'm removing, the amendment would remove the $105 million that is a piece of this overall supplemental appropriation. And that would, that's of course the item that goes towards Form Energy. And that would essentially go back to general revenue. We could reappropriate that money in however we saw fit, but then it just reorganizes the calculations for the other different pieces that are going elsewhere. So nothing really changes in the supplemental except for removing the $105 million subsidy to the corporate enterprise known as Form Energy. So with that being said, I reserve the right to close, Mr. Speaker, and I ask for the yeas and nays.
Okay, the question still is on the amendment read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment read by the clerk? Got a gentleman from the 97th, Douglas Hardy, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to oppose the gentleman's amendment. This amendment would effectively make the appropriation ineffective for the current needs for the economic development project. So for that reason, I rise in opposition to the gentleman's amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 53rd, Dr. Pritz, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the amendment. And, Mr. Speaker, at this time, I would like to make a motion that I previously discussed with you. This is in reference to an audio recording from the CEO of Form Energy. It's a 15-second recording, and I would ask leave of the body to play that.
The gentleman asked unanimous consent to play a recording. Is there objection? Okay, objection is heard.
So moved.
The gentleman moves that the rules be suspended and that the gentleman be granted permission to play a recording to the body. Those in favor, this is a rule suspension. Those in favor, roll call vote it's a roll call vote anyway. It's a rule suspension vote. Those in favor of the gentleman's motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Okay, has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ask for the result. On this question, there are 33 ayes, 61 nays, 6 members absent, less than a majority, less than 2/3 in the affirmative. The chair declares that motion lost. The gentleman still does have the floor for debate, though, if the gentleman wishes to debate the motion.
Yes, I would like to speak in favor of the motion of the gentleman from the first, the amendment from the first.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What that audio would have shown, Mr. Speaker, in this body, it's the CEO of Form Energy, and I'm quoting here. He said, "What we want to do is enable wind, water, and solar to be the only sources of generation in the world." He also said that we are building the kind of battery to fully replace coal and natural gas. Mr. Speaker, I'm all of the above when it comes to energy. We need to be supporting all forms of energy. What I oppose is this idea that we're going to be providing some sort of subsidy to one or the other. And that's effectively what we're doing with this supplemental appropriation. There are forces in our country and in our world that are trying to take down natural gas and coal and the natural resources right here in the state of West Virginia. It's not a coincidence that they chose West Virginia for a project like this. These are forces that want to ensure that what has made West Virginia great is taken out. They're trying to plant a seed here so that in the future, we're not going to have the natural resources going into the future that have sustained our state, that have made our country great. Coal and natural gas and so many of our other natural resources. We can send a message today. We can send a message that we are going to stand up for those resources and the jobs that they have created, and that we're going to ensure that those things are going to continue into the future. This is not about picking one natural resource over another. This is not about picking winners and losers. We should not be picking winners and losers. What we should be doing is ensure that everyone, all forms of energy, have an equal place and an equal ability to compete. Now, I think that if we continue with what we're doing, I think that this is going to be detrimental to the state of West Virginia. We can make a stand right here today. We can stand up for coal. We can stand up against any form of crony capitalism, and we can do the right thing for the people of West Virginia. I support this amendment, and I hope everyone else will join me. Thank you.
The question is still on the amendment read by the clerk. Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 52nd, Douglas Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I strongly oppose the amendment. I think that that we need to remember that when we vote this down, that we just voted against 750 jobs in Weirton. What's in Weirton today? We were told in committee that in Weirton today you have basically a lot of flat emptiness. It was once a booming industrial town, and on the site of the steel plant that is gone, completely wiped from the face of the earth, that there will be a battery factory. And the batteries they'll make will be for utilities. They're huge. They're not car batteries or anything. They are batteries that will support the grid. Now, what I mean by that, everybody knows what's happening in the Ukraine with Russia blowing up all of the electric supplies. This secures the grid. These batteries will help secure the grid. So it's about as patriotic as you can get in terms of what we need to do. It doesn't end any coal job. You're not voting against coal. What you're voting for is 750 jobs in a county that has been wiped out when they lost their steel plant. 750 jobs. Be ready to justify how you could vote against that. Now, let me just say that the Secretary of Economic Development has been very careful in this project to structure it out, and they have a plan, and they get so much money whenever they've done certain things. Whenever they've hired 100, I can't remember the numbers, like 150 people or something, they would get a payment. And then when they hire this, they get a payment. And at the end, when they get up to 750 jobs, and if they don't, then they've got to renegotiate the whole deal. Who owns the property? We do. The state of West Virginia owns the property, owns the real estate that they're going to be putting the factory on. You're going to get property taxes. You're going to 750 jobs. What's the income tax on that? And we just passed a bill, by the way, on housing, the West Virginia bill. That housing bill will allow us to have immediate controlled and planned housing in Weirton for these folks to come and work. And under the Jobs Act, it says that anybody out of state within 50 miles of, I think it's of the factory or whatever, they have a priority on being employed. And you say, well, then we're just going to load up Ohio and Pennsylvania with jobs outside of West Virginia. No, when we passed that West Virginia Housing Act, which is in existence now, but it's only for 3 sites, they will now be able to, if it passes, and it should, they'll be able to put housing in there to attract those Ohio and Pennsylvania folks to live in the city of Weirton, and it will be a city again. You say, so what's the risk? I think that the Secretary of Economic Development has minimized the risk on the facility. We own the property. If they don't fulfill their requirements, they're taken off, and we have a piece of property again that's available for development. Now, please understand that this is part of an overall plan by the Secretary of Economic Development to create a critical mass on the Ohio River where we used to have factories. We are replacing the factories that used to be there. We had a critical mass on the Ohio River. And we need these funds to provide to the Secretary, who's very careful with the use and who's very excited about this project, to encourage him to have this factory go into Weirton and literally transform the Northern Panhandle. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very, very important bill, and as I understand it, this would be money we need in order to continue this project. And if I'm wrong about that, then I apologize to everybody. But that's my understanding, that we need this money up front in order to get this project going. So, Mr. Speaker, I would urge the members to vote against the amendment and in favor of the bill.
Gentleman from the 23rd, Doug Worrell is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear that conversation a lot, 750 jobs. 750 jobs you'll hear over and over and over again. What they're missing are 2 key words, 750 West Virginia jobs. They're not guaranteed to be West Virginia jobs. That's the issue here that I have with giving this money. I would argue that $105 million given to Form Energy would create a system of saying we're always going to stand behind and support new startup businesses. This is not a standing Fortune 500 company. This is a startup business. Now, this is a total package of $290 million from what we're told. So my question to you all is, if we put $2.9 million in each one of your districts, 100 districts, could we come up with over 750 jobs, West Virginia jobs? I would argue that we could. And I would like to see that happen. I'd like to see $2.9 million come to my district. Because when I go back to my constituents and say, hey, we went ahead and gave $290 million to this startup company to start a company up in Weirton, West Virginia, they're probably going to be pretty mad at me. Why couldn't we do that here? Why couldn't we do that for our small businesses in West Virginia? Why couldn't we do the actual, middle-income families and help raise them up? So I have no problem, I want to be clear, with Form Energy. I've read everything about them. I have no problem with them coming here, but we're going to give them a $290 million tax break to do so. $290 million from our tax earners in our state to give to this company to start up their business in our state. And the last thing, we have heard this argument. We are making a statement today, and that statement is this: a company that wants to come to the state and eliminate our fossil fuel industry, we are going to not only roll out the red carpet, we're going to give you $290 million of our taxpayer money to do your business in this state. For those of you in the coal fields, go ask your coal miners how they feel about that. I bet they'll be pretty upset with you. So I would urge support of the gentleman's amendment to remove this $105 million to the Economic Development Office. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 10th, Douglas Anderson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to oppose the amendment from the gentleman from Hancock. I want to take us back in time in the Parkersburg area where I come from. Former Delegate John Kelly of this chamber, in one of his election campaigns, named more than 20 businesses manufacturing in the Parkersburg area that left this state and left this country by actions of the federal government in the past, where many jobs were transferred overseas. We would like to see economic development in Wood County. I have supported the new core appropriation in Mason County. I support the development of the Berkshire Hathaway projects in Jackson County. And our Economic Development Department, out of the former member of this body, Secretary Mitch Carmichael, has worked very hard putting this package together. Now, we can micromanage from this chamber. All 100 of us have different ideas of how this should come about. We have a responsibility for appropriation of the money or not appropriating the money. But I trust Secretary Carmichael, who has, in my opinion, driven a better deal on this than the new Corps, in the sense that our money is securitized for a number of years, and they have to meet certain benchmarks in terms of hiring people and in terms of development of this project. Make no bones about it, these batteries are going to be manufactured somewhere. They're going to be moved into businesses in West Virginia somewhere and other states somewhere. Now, where will they be manufactured? I would like to see them manufactured in Hancock County, helping to revitalize a large tract of land that has many hundreds of additional acres available for redevelopment, repopulation of businesses, and creation of even more jobs in the future. More importantly, the debate on this chamber today sends out a message throughout this country, and that message is West Virginia willing to embrace the future while respecting the past? This state was built on coal mining. This state was built on oil and gas drilling. This state was built on timbering. Both of my grandparents in the past worked in the oil fields around Waverly. One was a driller. One worked for a large corporation coming out of Tyler County in maintaining and pumping wells. That is part of the history. As this state and this country moves to the future, whatever that will be relative to green energy, I don't like to resort to name calling. I think the message we need to send to the nation, and from the debate on this floor and for the actions this House takes, is West Virginia respects the past. I respect the people who mine coal in this state. I respect the people that work on the oil and gas drills. I respect the people that build pipelines. And I will fight to preserve that heritage of the state. But I also think, just as in some reading I have done, in 1950, there were about 250,000 coal miners working underground in this state. much fewer today. The mechanization of the mines changed the nature of that industry. My grandfather drilled wells with an old sputter rig. Never dreamed of going 6,000 feet and drilling laterally. That technology has changed. We have had to modernize the laws of our state. On this particular thing, we have a chance to create jobs in the Weirton area. I'm far from the Weirton area. Nobody in Wood County is going to be employed in Weirton in this battery unless they move. It's too far to drive every day. But the prosperity that can be created by these jobs, they're going to be created somewhere. There are other states that will embrace this and say, come to us. But they are willing to make an investment. And the message we send today is when our secretary negotiates what I believe is a good deal for this state, are we going to cut the floor out from underneath him and walk away from it, creating a loss of jobs in this state, potential jobs in this state, and send a message out that, well, maybe we'll take you, maybe we won't, if you're interested in West Virginia. I respectfully oppose the amendment from the gentleman from Hancock, and I ask the body to do so as well. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 35th, Doug Advance, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of Delegate McGinn's amendment. The reason being is I'm from the coal industry. I live there. I was born and raised in southern West Virginia in Wyoming County. I work it every day. I know what it's like for the regulations and for the people to be talking about me because of the job that I've chosen to do and the heritage that I live in. I love coal mining. I love it. It's in my blood. My grandfather done it. My great-grandfather done it. My dad, my uncles, everybody in my family has been a coal miner. I agree that there needs to be some jobs in the state of West Virginia. But I will say this, I also think that I wish that all of this body had the same love that they have for jobs and want to see new jobs come as I wish they had the love for it and use that same love back to the people who are coal miners, to the people who are in the natural gas industry, who are in these industries of fossil fuel, who every time that we see in southern West Virginia is against us. This whole body that people look at in this state, or in the southern part of the state, they look at everybody in this body and they feel that you are against us. We can get zero help, zero. $105 million or $250 million will go a long way in about 10 counties in the southern part of the state. I have people in my county that can't even go and doesn't have running water. And what water they do have, they can't drink it. We have people in our county that takes a trip that could take possibly 15 minutes on the roads that you have, takes us 35 and 45 because we can't get proper pavement. We can't get proper correction of roads. We can't get stuff like that. So this $105 million here that want to go to Form Energy for unicorns and pixie dust that we don't even know about could do a lot of good work towards getting my people some water, getting people where they don't have to travel 45 minutes with a tank in the back of their pickup truck to fill up water to do them for a week off of some spring coming out of the mountain. I mean, it blows my mind. I know I'm new, and I know probably a lot of you could care less of what I've got to say. But I'm telling you right now that money could help out a lot better places than just 750 jobs up in Weirton. Now, I'm for jobs. I'm for helping out. Hey, I'll do whatever I can to get some jobs. But now, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to do it at the expense of cutting the people of southern West Virginia's throat. I'm not going to do it at the expense of the taxpayers of West Virginia that pay the money out there on just some whim that we don't even know what's going to happen. And then to say, I'm tired of seeing the coal industry attacked. People say it's not going to take coal jobs, and coal jobs are here, and they're the boss, and all this and that. I'm telling you, when you go and you make deals with the devil of a company that sits back and says that his whole sole goal is to do away with fossil fuels, completely do away with them, and bring the world to solar, wind, and water, I'm okay with the energy part of that on those things. But what I'm not okay with is doing away with the heritage and doing away with the people of this state that work hard in the southern part of the state and in the northern part. There's coal mines up there too. But I'm saying I'm not okay with somebody saying they're going to cut the throat of the people that work here. You take those batteries and you take the places of these coal-fired plants that generate electricity and stuff, and you replace those with that, you replace jobs. So 750 jobs to make a couple batteries, guess what it does? It removes jobs elsewhere. So I'm telling you, I'm strong in support of Delegate McGeehan's amendment here, and I will stand firm as I can stand all day long on that point. I'm against it. I'd rather you take that $105 million and at the end $250 million and put it towards Wyoming County to get some water, McDowell County to get it. Have you even been there? You don't know what it's like until you live it. And then we can't just up and move to Weirton to get one of the $750 jobs. I mean, 750 jobs that's out there that we don't even know is going to sustain for more than the 5 years. So I'm saying, come down to my part of the woods. Come down and live in my neck of the woods a little bit and see what it's like and see if you want to put your $105 million somewhere else. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 2nd, Douglas Teslo, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What an interesting day. What an interesting day. Ladies and gentlemen, for 60 years, or thereabouts, Weirton Steel Company paid the highest taxes and employed more people in the state of West Virginia than anybody else. We were a dirty old smoky steel town. We made a lot of steel. We made 1 out of every 4 tin cans made in the country and 1 out of every 5 in the world. It was a place where we all worked, paid taxes, and lived life. Frankly, we didn't care if anybody came to Weirton or not from out of the area. We were too busy working and making money. And a lot of that went to the state of West Virginia. We were glad to make sure that money went to the state of West Virginia. Now we come to this opportunity. I submit to you, to the folks from the coal fields, I am a big supporter of coal, without question and without a doubt. I have a record. If you want to see what bills I've sponsored, you can take a look. I've sponsored several. I was glad to do it, and I'll continue to do it because, frankly, I don't care what the chairman of Forum Energy says. We are never going to be able to get, in our lifetime, and those of us in this body, we'll never be done with the use of coal as an energy source. There's not enough of this other energy, it's not dense enough, and it's not reliable enough. Now, the question is, how much coal will we need? That's a debatable issue, but it's still going to be here. We would like, in the city of Weirton, and I don't think I will suffer anybody coming and trying to refute what I have to say. We would like to go back to providing tax like we used to. Whether we make it or not depends largely upon this amendment and this bill. 50 acres are going to be used for this site. Well, we have ready to go 900 and overall 1,200. What we do after this is passed, of course, is up to us and partially to the state of West Virginia, but with all the natural gas that we have, with the energy supplies, we can start to get more business in here. And I intend to push that as hard as I can. It's our chance to get back to doing what we do best. It's not a mistake that the city of Weirton had this history. And it's not our fault that it happened that way. We are now on what the government refers to as Maritime Highway 70, better known to all of us as the Ohio River. They call it Maritime Highway because they intend to bring barges up rivers and do that type of thing for a long time. It's our location. But our location, make no mistake about it, is in the state of West Virginia and is used for the benefit of the people of West Virginia. We're no different than anybody else. I frankly am a little disappointed in this amendment. I urge you all to vote against it. And if you would like to talk to me about the opportunities that could be in the city of Weirton, I'd be more than happy to talk to you at any time. Thank you very much.
Gentleman, 69th, look at Marple.
Well, I rise in support of our senior statesman, well, our delegates, to speak against the motion and to speak for the bill. Here the gentleman from the southern part of West Virginia, and I'm telling you, I married a coal miner's daughter. His father was her father was a coal miner. We don't have to worry about coal. Coal is not going to be replaced, or gas, to power these batteries that this company is going to make. They're making large industrial batteries. They don't charge themselves. They have to be placed in a place where they can supply electric, and it's basically to help when the peak use is going on. They'll supply the extra energy until they can bring up a coal-fired plant that we heard about that saved us at Christmas time, where the grid would have went out. Now, we've all got batteries. The best batteries you can buy are in our computers and in our cell phones, and we got to charge them every night. These batteries that this company is going to make, they have to be charged, and they're going to be charged by electricity that's made by coal and gas, secondly, and solar and wind is not going to be able to keep up with the demand with more electric cars coming on the road. The only thing that's ever going to hurt coal and gas is when nuclear power, and it's coming. They're building a new nuclear power plant in the state of Washington. They're using a new technique, carbon graphite balls with the electric fuel and the nuclear fuel inside, and it will not melt down. It is guaranteed not to melt down like the nuclear rods that are in the plants like a 3 Mile Island in Chernobyl. And it's spreading. It's going to come this way. And those carbon graphite balls are being made here in West Virginia at a plant in Clarksburg. Now, I'm in favor of the bill and against the motion. This is going to bring jobs to West Virginia. They've got several hundred acres up there that has railroads, has highways in there, and it has the river. And this is going to help West Virginia flourish. And again, I say this is not going to hurt coal. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the gentleman for the 22nd, Delegate Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, first things first, I want to rise and tell you that I respect the gentleman, the Vice Chairman of the Committee on Government Organization, and that he and I have talked at length about this deal. You know, I've looked at the entire memorandum of agreement between the state and Form Energy that's in question here. And I don't think it will surprise anyone in this body that I'm a pretty big hawk on oversight of that particular department, as some of you will recall from last year and still. I want to make sure that what we do with taxpayer dollars is the right thing to do with taxpayer dollars. So let's talk about the technology and the opportunity that we have before us. Am I sure this is the best possible deal the state ever could have gotten? No, I'm not. I wasn't in those conversations. Am I a little bit irritated that we got the information about the deal 3 and 4 days before we have to make an ultimate decision? The answer to that's yes. I think that needs to happen a lot faster. I think we need to be read in a lot earlier, and I think that the people tasked with appropriating dollars have a need to know. Now, all that said, I don't think this is going to do anything to harm coal jobs. I've heard that discussion over and over and over again. You know, the John Amos Power Plant ran out of the correct types of coal that we produce right here in West Virginia. And it turns out that we had to buy our power on the open market. Now, if we had battery technology installed there, we wouldn't have had to have purchased power on the open market, and all the things you've been seeing in the news here about the Public Service Commission denying a rate case and the constantly increasing costs of electricity to our people would not have happened. This sort of technology is going to be used, regardless of the way that the electricity was generated. And the reason for that is because it begins to flatten the demand curve. So when power is cheap, you can charge the batteries. When it's expensive, you can release the energy from them. Now, am I in support of the gentleman's amendment? Unfortunately, no. I'm going to urge opposition to it. And I'm going to urge opposition to it because 750 jobs in Weirton matters. Because it's going to happen somewhere in this country, one way or the other. But let it be known, and I heard folks saying, you know, what have you done for southern West Virginia? What have you done for coal country? I'll tell you exactly what we've done. We've lowered severance taxes, we've put miners back to work, we've beat back the EPA, we've done every last bit of those things, and this chamber, this legislature, and this state supports every way that we can possibly create energy. You want to know what we're going to do when we're finished arguing this? Come by the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure and check out the $75 million annual tax break that's on my agenda for coal companies that decide to build additional infrastructure to get to their mines. Or maybe join me on a phone call sometime when I'm dealing with the railroads who are failing to get cars to the mines so that we can get this coal to the ports and ultimately beat back Vladimir Putin and power the Ukraine and all of Europe. Now, I invite you to be on those calls. We support every possible way that we can generate electricity in this state. We're going to be a powerhouse in that one way or the other. This is another way to be a powerhouse in that long into the future for the next century. Unfortunately, I have to oppose the gentleman's amendment, but don't you dare say that we don't support coal.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 76th, Delegate Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So these amendments here, this conversation reminds me of a Beastie Boys song called Sabotage. And we've talked a lot about the messages that we're sending. And we are sending a message of sabotage in a number of different ways. One is sabotage of our Secretary of Economic Development. I think we're sending a message that be careful when you negotiate with the state of West Virginia in good faith. I mean, we had an attempt to try to slander a CEO on the House floor, drag him through the mud. You know, if we would go through and try to see every statement of different CEOs and Fortune 500 companies, I bet you that we might start cutting back on cutting taxes for those corporate breaks here and there. Because there's a number of people who are doing business in West Virginia who've said exactly the same thing. But it's not about what people say, it's about the jobs that are going to come here. And that's the second thing. We're talking about sabotaging the city of Weirton. The good people there who for the longest time have been waiting for this type of opportunity. And this is not just about 750 jobs. This is about the potential for a cluster, an anchor for industry. We heard it from the gentleman from the second. 50 out of what, 900 acres? This is an opportunity to start something that can grow bigger and bigger. And also, you know, there are guidelines in this. There are stipulations that they have to prove what they can do. They have to come through with the promises that they've made, Form Energy. And if they don't, West Virginia has a developed property for another industry, another company to come in and try to do the same thing. But the last thing is this is sabotage. We heard about coal miners. This is sabotage to those people who used to be coal miners, that used to be steel workers. These are the people in these areas that need jobs or who've moved away because they couldn't do it anymore in Weirton. And we've got so many places like that in the state of West Virginia. We have to start getting our head out of the sand and thinking about every new job being an opportunity for the people of West Virginia to come back, and those who haven't left, that they can stay, rebuild, and succeed right here. And so I'm against this amendment, and I'm against trying to sabotage how we work with companies and bring in that investment. And I think that's something that Democrats, Republicans, in a bipartisan manner should get behind. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 5th, Delegate Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To steal a gentleman from the 76th thunder on sabotage, I can't stand it. I know you planned it. That's what I think about this amendment, to steal those lyrics. Now, I didn't think I'd have to get up and say anything because I presumed we would have this supermajority online with creating more jobs, bringing investment into West Virginia, but apparently that's just political fodder and not a reality. You know, I fully support the coal fields. To the gentleman, numbers hidden back there. 35th, what was it? 35th. Fully support. We voted all the time to try to bring reinvestment in the coal communities. And we have a lot of coal communities in southern West Virginia. But we are not just coal communities. We have steel communities in the northern panhandle. Coal fields in the south, basically steel fields in the north, okay? And this facility on 55 acres in the northern panhandle will revitalize what is basically a ghost town and turn it into good jobs. And that's important whether it's the southern coal fields or the northern panhandle or the eastern panhandle right here in Charleston. It's important throughout the state. And the message that we're sending, not just to our fellow West Virginians, but the country, if we're going to compete or not. Do you want to compete? Because if you pass this amendment, you're sending the message we don't want to compete with the rest of the country. We have an opportunity through this Forum Energy project to bring in these jobs. And let's talk about, gentleman brought up, though, he's not sure it's going to go to West Virginians. I invite you to travel in Northern Panhandle. I think you know we have a strong labor workforce. We have strong unions that build the bridges, build the roads, build facilities like this, employ a lot of people, give a lot of hope. I want that to happen in Northern Panhandle. I want that to happen in West Virginia. You want it to happen in Ohio or Pennsylvania? Sure, vote down the amendment. I mean, it's a shame that we're discussing this when we know how bad we're hurting up north in certain areas, and in particular Weirton. So I'd be remiss if I didn't stand on the floor and support the Northern Panhandle, support jobs coming to West Virginia and investment. And one thing that's been said is how this is bad for coal. This facility is on the PJM grid. PJM grid. Guess what powers the grid? Coal! Coal does! So if we're going to make these arguments, at least get the facts straight, and not just the stories you want to tell. Back it up with the facts. It's powered by coal. It's going to be good for coal. It's going to be good for West Virginians. It's going to be good for those who build this facility, those who remain here, stay here, and rebuild their families, invest in our communities. And we're going to see it for decades to follow. And for us to turn our backs on this opportunity and say we don't want to compete anymore over some fallacies and conspiracy theories goes against everything we're all about as West Virginians. Do not support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 37th, Delegate Gearhart's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, when this bill came through committee, it came through without amendment. And I can tell you that if you want to be certain to see your name in the newspaper, all you have to do is have a recognizable voice and be the lone no vote on a bill of some degree of importance, because I've seen a good bit of that. After that vote in committee, I returned to my office, and I don't often do this, but I penned out some eloquence for tomorrow's debate on passage without consideration of an amendment offered to the bill. I penned it out because I know that after we finish here, if we ever finish here, I've got to return back south this morning or this afternoon. I've got a long evening, and I know tomorrow will be an early morning, and whatever I need to say might be a little fuzzy if I don't have it written out. So I'll save that eloquence for tomorrow, maybe, and simply comment on one particular item now. The amendment here addresses the dollars. It addresses the dollars we have in surplus. $105 million would remain in surplus as opposed to being committed to a venture committed to by the Department of Economic Development. All of us here in this chamber gave consideration not that awful long ago to tax cuts. And we know that the Senate's contemplation of those tax cuts have involved the fact that what we suggest might be a little too expensive, that we might not be able to rise the economy quick enough to overcome the dollars that won't be available via those tax cuts. When we take this $105 million out of surplus and utilize it toward something else, we no longer have that available to backstop any tax relief that we're able to offer to the taxpayers. We don't have that backstop. And we give leave to the argument that we have cut taxes too much to be responsible. I don't think we have in the bill that we've offered. However, I think prudence says it's good to have as much available to take care of that as possible. In the bill we offered, we left $700 million. However, as much as we can possibly leave in surplus to accommodate that period of time that those tax cuts are taking place and the economy is doing what it does to generate additional revenue, it would be good to have those dollars available. Maybe I've got more to say tomorrow, maybe not. However, I do urge passage of the gentleman's amendment. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 13th, Douglas Hackert's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was going to hold this off till tomorrow, but if I don't say it now, we might not see tomorrow. I have a lot of respect for everybody in this room. We don't always agree. Most of the time we all have fun. And I do support the coal industry, as my family has, because I had family in the coal industry. And I support the gas industry because it's part of the future. But what everybody in here I think is forgetting is what West Virginia is known for. Hard-working, trustworthy people. My granddaddies and most of your alls and some of the people in here, I know their dads, they made a deal, found out 3 or 4 days later, it might not be a real good deal. But they made their word, they give their word and they stuck by it. We're $75 million into this deal. And if I offend anyone, I'm sorry in advance. If we do not go through with this, we will be known on the world stage as people that start something and don't finish it. Good, bad, or ugly, our secretary made a deal. People above us made it to go along with it, and we need to stand by it, and we need to get on with business. Thank you very much.
Gentleman from the 44th, Douglas Kirby's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of the gentleman's amendment. And quite honestly, I'm in shock, I'm saddened, because as I walked around my district and I campaigned, I was asked to help a lot of things out, or to help a lot of people. School children, families that were struggling with addiction, people that couldn't afford their medication or couldn't afford groceries because of inflation. I was asked to come to Charleston and look into the water infrastructure and why it is that we had families and communities in my home county, in my hometown, that went almost a month without running water. I was asked to fix CPS. I was asked to fix PEIA, or to at least explain why that had not been fixed. One thing I wasn't asked to do was to come and fund Bill Gates. I wasn't asked to come and give billionaires $100 million, $290 million of our taxpayers' money. With all due respect, there's no one above my district, there's no one above my constituents that gets to go and make deals on their behalf and then sit me down and force me to vote for a bill because we've already spent $75 million on it. My district and my constituents and myself do not plan on being held hostage by the fact that we've already spent $75 million on what I would call a bad deal. I'm not going to talk about the effect that this will have on coal because that's been addressed enough. But I am going to say is what this does is it does send a message, and that's been talked about frequently. What kind of message are we going to send here today? Well, the message that I believe will be sent if this amendment fails and this bill eventually passes tomorrow is that the people within our districts and around the state that sent us here to fight back on globalism, to fight back on the green energy push to kill coal and to kill natural gas, the people they sent here to fight on their behalf have abandoned them. And they've abandoned them because they got scared by being primaried. They got scared by being outspent by these groups that are pushing this deal. I'm just asking you all guys to do a gut check. Who sent you here? Did you come here to do Bill Gates' bidding? Or did you come here to do the people of West Virginia's building? This isn't about Northern Panhandle. This isn't about Eastern Panhandle. If this plant location was next to my home and I was going to benefit, or people I knew were going to benefit, I would still be against this bill because we've yet to fix the roads. We've yet to fix the schools. We've yet to fix the hospitals. We've yet to fix PEIA. But yet we found time to fund Bill Gates and to fund this pie-in-the-sky idea. And just so we're clear, 750 jobs. We're asked to spend $290 million for 750 jobs that may come, that might come, that could possibly appear at some point. Well, that's $387,000 a job. Do you think that's efficiency? Do you think that's the kind of numbers, that's the kind of math, or that this is the kind of bill that your constituents sent you here to vote for? If they did, I guess oppose the amendment. If they didn't, please support the amendment. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 26th District Rohrbach's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully rise to speak against the gentleman's amendment today. Served in this chamber now for 9 years. It's been a real learning experience. It's one of the most interesting displays of human emotion that I've ever seen. I've learned a lot. One of the things I've learned is the importance of coal to our state. I'm from Huntington. It's not really coal country. What I've learned is coal is not a job, it's a culture. It's a way of life. So I share that pain that the gentleman from Wyoming County has talked about, his district. We do have problems and we need to fix them. But what I've also learned is this is a very diverse state. The economy of this state is terribly different from one part to another. My friends from the Eastern Panhandle, they have an entirely different economy than we have in Southern or Central West Virginia. Entirely different. I live in the lower Ohio Valley, and I can tell you, our economy is different than most of this state. As the gentleman from the second alluded, we are a manufacturing economy helped by river and rail. We always have been, and we always will be. Now, I can take you, and as some of you probably know, you're going to be visiting Huntington in May for interims. And I'd like to have the opportunity to get some of you on a bus, drive you around Huntington. We can spend about an hour on that bus, maybe not that long. I can show you where there were 10,000 jobs that were there when I grew up in Huntington, and they're not there anymore, folks. So there's been job loss in the Ohio Valley as well. It's been huge job loss. Now, I don't live close to Weirton, but I think the economy there is reasonably similar to where I live. And we've struggled. We've struggled mightily, as have the coal fields. That's not in debate here. It's not. Every person in this body is going to do what they can at the appropriate times to help the coal fields. That's not the bill in front of us today, ladies and gentlemen. The bill that's in front of us is doing something to try to stimulate the economy in the upper Ohio Valley, which is a manufacturing, steel-based economy built on river and rail. That's the bill that's in front of us today. And if we can look at some of the things that the Department of Economic Development has done in the last 3 years, let's take a hard look at what we've done. We've got Nucor, the world's largest metal recycler, at least North America's largest metal recycler. The world's first all-solar industrial site is going in Jackson County. Now we've got a chance to put something in Weirton that may be cutting edge, So we are trying to move into the 21st century economy and diversify. But what we're really trying to do here is attempt to rebuild the economy in the northern panhandle. And again, I just can't urge you enough that, as the gentleman from the second spoke, I don't recognize Huntington from when I grew up. The job loss has been staggering. My father worked in a glass factory. He ran the machine that made the bottles. It's gone. One time that plant alone had 4,000 employees. It's gone. So again, when you come to Huntington, I'd love to have the opportunity to lead a little tour around Huntington and see what's really happened, because that part of the state in the Ohio River Valley has suffered as well. And I just, as people look to vote, this has been a well thought out process to try to redevelop this state. And we are seeing signs of life. But what I would urge you to consider, this is a very diverse state with an extraordinarily diverse economy, and what's good for one of us is good for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 29th, Doug Dillon's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've been talking about this for a while, and I'm not going to address the meat of the bill today. I'll just speak to a couple of issues which have arisen, some claims which have been made here today in debate of this amendment, which I firmly support. No one here is saying let's not have batteries for utilities. You know, what we're saying is let's let companies invest, develop, prove their technologies on their own merits. Let's not have these government-supported enterprises. Let's let utilities choose their batteries from options which have proved viable. If they need them, they'll find those technologies themselves. And I want to address a couple other items which have come up, and the assertions which have been made that we're always going to have this base load coal supply. Well, as the gentleman from the 53rd alluded to a little bit earlier, the values and the mission statement of Forum Energy are aligned very well with those entities around the country, such as the Sierra Club, which brag about all the coal-fired plants that they have been successful in retiring and shutting down over the last 10 years. It's over 300. Over 300. Now, you think about the economic impact of that. You think about our local coal-fired plants like John Amos putting out something like $700, $800 million per year of economic impact, employment over 1,000 direct and indirect. Do the numbers on that. 1,000 jobs times 300 coal plants shut down over the last 10 years. I'm not a math expert, but I think that works out to around 300,000 United States jobs that have been lost by people who have a vendetta against the coal industry. And it is factual. If you look into this company, the CEO has made multiple statements to the effect that they want to completely take out any type of electricity generation which is based on combustion of coal, oil, or gas. So I've heard some talk about strengthening the grid. What we need to strengthen the grid is more points of generation. We need more power plants around this community. Imagine if we had 2 or 3 additional plants at around 1,000 jobs apiece. And you know, we're about to lose one up here in Pleasants County. It's about to go, and there's several others around the region that are about to be retired. What are we doing to help those situations? How much money, how much appropriation are we putting forth to help those enterprises? No one's worried about those. That's all I have to say for today. Stay tuned. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 87th, Doug Howell's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Most of you know I chair the Committee on Economic Development. A lot of you have come to me with various things that you saw you could do in your districts. And I don't care where it comes from, or if it even if will, you know, boy, I'd like that be in my district. I will fight to make sure it goes in your district. Interesting, Joel Garreau wrote a book in 1981 called The 9 Nations in North America, where he divided the country up socioeconomically. And the funny thing is, West Virginia didn't fit. We're split in half, and we're seeing that here today. The North versus the South. That's where he drew the dividing line. He said, these people, if they could form separate countries, would not be in the same country. But we are in the same state. And I'd like to think that I have 99 friends in here. And if I got something big, or even something small, going into my district, and I need help getting it there, that you will be there with me, just as I will be there with you. I'm not a big fan of how we do things in any of our states. It would be nice if we didn't have to give incentives. But we can't unilaterally disarm. The other 49 states would just take everything and we would get nothing. We have to compete. And unfortunately, that means our government being involved. I think that this is one of those times that we need to look at our neighbors and say, this is something I don't like. I'm not sure how it's going to affect my district, but it's going to improve my neighbor's district. It's going to improve the state of West Virginia. And then when it's my turn, they'll be there for me. I respectfully ask you to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 100th, Dr. Ridenour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of this amendment. We've heard from our Democrat colleagues how we are going to be supporting their agenda, Joe Biden's agenda. That's not what I was sent here to do. I was sent here to avoid that type of vote, to not do that type of action that costs our constituents their money. We're going to be voting for Keynesian socialism, and make no mistake about it, that's what this is. We're throwing money at this problem. We think that we're going to throw money like Roosevelt did during the Great Depression, extending the Great Depression, and somehow we're going to be different this time. We're not going to be different. I would urge people to understand that when I asked the question of Secretary Carmichael, that whether or not this technology was proven, he had no answer for us. We don't have proof that this technology is going to work. So we're betting on a technology that we don't know is going to be valid. And we're going to throw $290 million and hopefully get 750 jobs, some of which may be in West Virginia. Some of them may be in Pennsylvania. Some may be in Ohio. The corporate headquarters is in Massachusetts. Will that be included? So I have some very strong differences, and I really don't like the fact that we are putting our economy increasingly in the hands of anti-fossil fuel ESG companies who want a stranglehold over our economy. And that's the position we, as a body, are putting them in. We're getting ready to tell these companies, backed by Bezos, backed by Gates, that they can have a veto, essentially, over how our economy is going to work. I'd like us to make sure that we're doing the right thing. We need to be standing up and saying, no, we are not going to fund this company. If you, Gates, Bezos, want to fund this company, you go ahead and do it. We'll give the money, the people's money, back to the people of West Virginia via a tax cut, the income tax cut that we voted for in this body. It's something that we need to be looking at. I don't understand why we are trying to support a company that is anti-West Virginia, anti-West Virginian in its stance relative to fossil fuels. That company, in fact, stands for the types of woke policies most of us in this body are against. So I would strongly urge support for the amendment. If you vote yea on the amendment, frankly, you're voting conservative. If you vote nay on this amendment, frankly, you're not voting for what Ronald Reagan would have voted for, what he would have supported, what he would have insisted on when he was president. We need to keep that in mind. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 57th, Dr. Scaff's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't even know what we're talking about now. I'm so lost. First up, gentleman from the 100th, will you yield for a minute?
Go ahead.
You're from Jefferson County?
Yes, I am. A great district, too.
Do you have Procter & Gamble in your district?
Not in my district.
Close to you?
Yes.
They supply jobs?
They supply some jobs, yes.
A lot of jobs?
Some jobs, yes.
Do you know what their mission
Most of the jobs in my district are actually for people.
Gentleman's point of order has been raised.
The line of questioning is well outside the scope of not only the bill, its underlying bill and the dollars, but the intent of the.
I'm getting to it. Yes, sir. I'll ask right now. Candid, right to the point.
Okay.
You mentioned companies. Let me just read. Thank you for yielding. Thank you. I appreciate you. Mission statement for Procter & Gamble. Learn more about our company brand projects, partnerships, environmental footprint, conserving precious resources, helping ensure a healthy planet. The mission statement, accelerating action on climate change to reach net zero emissions by 2040. Your district, your jobs in your area, every company. Ladies and gentlemen, what are we talking about here? The gentleman from the 53rd, I'm not going to ask you to rise because we've been talking about this too long. He mentioned the reason he was against, reason why he wanted you to support this amendment was because of the mission of an unknown company trying something different to help become better stewards of the environment. Let me tell you about a company you might have heard, Toyota. Toyota's mission, contributing to achieve carbon neutrality, aimed to establish sustainable society in harmony with nature. They've been here for a long time, creating a lot of jobs. Opportunities for all, their mission statement. Another company you might have heard, I mentioned Procter & Gamble. Nucor, oh wow, did a lot for them last year. They probably don't care about the environment. Oh wait, yes they do. Nucor, to operate more sustainably as they move. To create new opportunities, utilizing revolutionary steel-making technology. That didn't matter last year. Didn't matter last year. We gave them one of the biggest deals ever, one of the biggest, or actually this summer, yeah, last year, to create jobs in West Virginia. I just don't even know what we're talking about. We've lost our mission here as West Virginians. It's not about being a Democrat, it's not about Republicans or Reagan. I love Ronald Reagan. If I was old enough, I would have voted for him twice. Yeah. I love Ronald Reagan. He was a Democrat first, then became Republican. That's okay. The bottom line is, it shouldn't be about Democrats or Republicans or North or South or East or West. I travel this country, ask people to come to West Virginia to invest in West Virginia. We're getting ready to do a tax break that I supported and all of us supported to bring people to West Virginia. Senate President said 400,000 people will move to West Virginia to live, work, and raise a family. We didn't ask them what industry they were going to be in. We didn't ask them who they worked for. But we wanted to create jobs and do things here. So this amendment, correct me if I'm wrong, because we've drifted about. I've learned something today, Mr. Speaker. If you want to try to kill something, just mention the word coal in it, and I guess you can try to kill anything here. But the bottom line here is this. The cell phone, one day, well, it was said it was a fad, wasn't going to catch on. Well, it's been around a while. But people were innovative. They were creative. They tried something different. This company may not exist today, but guess what? They're going to exist. And they chose West Virginia because of us. Because we can move quickly to move mountains. They saw what we did with Nucor. They saw what we did in the past with Procter & Gamble. They saw what we did with Toyota. So why is this any different? Picking and choosing, winners and losers, that's what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing. I don't care who the president is today. I don't care where it's located, but guess what? 750 jobs, that's just a start. 3,400 spin-off jobs all across the region. Yeah, there'll probably be some in Ohio, Pennsylvania, southern West Virginia, middle West Virginia. They could be all over the place. $2.1 billion economic impact. It's not just about 750 jobs. And to be honest, I like what the Department of Economic Development did with this bill better than what we did last year. There are more triggers. There's more safety precautions in place. This is fully vetted. They don't get all that money if they don't do what they say they're going to do and create the jobs they say they're going to do. I think we got to think strongly here. This should be about one West Virginia. One West Virginia. Not a Democratic West Virginia, not a Republican West Virginia, not a Northern West Virginia or Southern West Virginia. Let's create jobs for all people, all West Virginians. So just think about this. If you've ever driven up there, my buddy from the 2nd District, Gotham City is what I think about when I used to drive through there, the vacant steel mill, Gotham City. I'm a Batman guy. You drive through there in the dark of the night. It's pretty awesome. I think they even filmed some movies up there. It was sad. It's been sad. It's dark. It's depressing. No offense to that area. They need a shot in the arm, just like a lot of areas in this state. But we have a chance for that area. That company chose that area. We're not choosing that area for them. We didn't say go there, not Southern West Virginia. We said come to West Virginia. We'll make it work. So guess what they had? Flat land, resources, and a willingness. You know what we sold them on? We had Republicans and Democrats that would come together to move mountains to attract your business to West Virginia. That's not what we're saying today. That's not what we're doing today. We're sending the wrong message, you're right. So has anybody driven up there? I'm sure a lot of you have driven through there. You've seen what it looks like. Well, let me show you what it could look like. I was going to save this for tomorrow, but let me show you what it will look like. Now that's an impressive welcome sign, if I've ever seen one. Welcome facility to West Virginia, whether you're coming from Ohio, Pennsylvania, or anywhere else just passing through. That's one heck of an impressive facility as you enter West Virginia. A lot better, with no offense to my friends in the Northern Panhandle, of what it looks like today. So ladies and gentlemen, vote for this amendment if you're for no creativity, no innovation, no new jobs, no new people. The only thing you should vote no to is this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 40th, Doug Cooper's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and every time I've ever spoken in this body, I've intended to speak. Until today. But let me quickly tell you a story. I come from a little town called Hinton, West Virginia. It sits at the intersection of the New River and the Greenbrier River. When it was formed off of land given to the community by the railroad when they built the railroad, the C&O or the whatever it was called in 1879 or 80. But it was formed there. The little town flourished. The railroad provided lots of jobs. So one day there was a factory. Some factory folks came to town in the 1900s, 1920, 30. They'd come up with this way of making some fibers or something or other, and they were needing proximity to water and proximity to transportation. Well, if you recall, and I don't remember back that far either, but the railroad was the transportation item of the day then, just like the Ohio River was and remains today. Anyway, this factory came to town and they wanted space to put this factory in. And the city of Hinton said, no, we don't need that. We've got the railroad. So they let that opportunity go by. We've got the railroad. We don't need another factory. The railroad was there, the shops were there, the car service was there. There was 300 to 500 jobs in that little town. Population was about 9,000 people by 1950. The little factory went in upstream about 30 miles away in a location called Narrows, Virginia. And by 1950, people were driving from Hinton to Narrows to work in that little factory. By 1965, the railroad started to back out a little bit, and by 1980, the railroad shops in Hinton, West Virginia were closed. All those jobs went away, just like they went away in Weirton when the steel industry fell on its face. But those railroad jobs went away. Not all of them, but about 100, 75 maybe. So we got Hinton left, but Hinton says, oh, that's okay. Interstate 64 is coming through, and we're going to be the Mecca. We're going to be the hub here because it's going to come right down old Route West Virginia 3 and go up into Beckley, and so everyone will be able to use it. At the very last minute, someone got a hold of a map and said, wait a minute, why in the world are we going to go through Hinton, West Virginia? So they went through a place called Sam Black and so on, and missed Hinton by about 12 miles. So now Hinton is sitting there today. Population has went down from 9,000 to 1,700. We have industry. We seriously do. We have some construction crews tearing down dilapidated structures, and we did have one small factory whose principal product was adult sex toys. That may sound funny, but it was 2 jobs. 2 jobs. We've got to oppose this amendment, folks. We have not diversified this economy in West Virginia, and that's why we've had so many problems my entire life. We talk it, but we never do it. Now, I agree, we cannot abandon coal. We cannot assume that coal is ever going to quit. We have dropped in production already from 86 million ton when I came here 11 years ago to 74, I believe, this year, million tons. But that's to be expected because the whole world is slipping away from the amount of coal they use. Plus, all the flooding in Australia is over, and the Chinese are back to buying coal off of Australia now. This is an opportunity to put a battery factory in a community that didn't run anybody off. My community just refused to put the people there. Weirton didn't do anything other than offer a place, and the steel industry left them. We have got to support that, just like we would need to support water in Wyoming County or anything else in any of the other counties that are not living up to snuff. But I have got to be against this amendment because I've always been and stood for diversifying the economy of this state. We have to do that. We cannot let one industry fall on its face and all of us run out in the street and start crying about it. No one industry should have a community or a state that much in its grips. But that's the way coal has had us for all these years, and it's been a dependable thing. I agree. But as the world changes, we have to change. If we have an opportunity to put a factory here, whether it's making adult sex toys or electricity or batteries, we should jump all over that opportunity. We should jump all over it because it's another job. It will fix roads. Not only will it fix roads, it will put people to work somewhere. And that's what we should be about. Washington, D.C., with its current leadership, is not going to be able to support us forever. I think they're going to run out of money up there. We are going to have to be diverse in our economy, diverse in our thinking, and at least forward thinking in our attitude. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 11th, Douglas Fehrenbacher, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand today in opposition to this amendment, and I would encourage many of you to consider the message that we are about to send. For us to support this amendment basically dooms this business opportunity and the job growth that it represents, and the chilling effect that that will have on our state, to me, is unmeasurable. For us to have struck a deal with, yes, a growing startup company, and then, frankly, to kind of welch on that deal because we wouldn't provide the financial support to me, I don't know what company that's willing to make significant investment to create jobs in our state is going to think of us. We will put ourselves behind the 8 ball, lose all credibility, and our hopes of growing this state and growing employment, we will set ourselves back decades. We've talked about 750 jobs, but I think the real effect is that when you create a manufacturing facility, you typically get a multiplier of up to 4. So the city of Weirton could expect many more than 750 jobs because there are going to be suppliers for that facility. There are going to be jobs created at stores and building houses and everything else that those workers are going to need. Yes, the price tag seems high, and yes, the technology is not proven, but I think it's a prudent risk for us as a body to support. The other thing I'll say, just because I frankly didn't expect it in the course of this conversation, is I don't consider this a vote or a referendum on energy, on coal or fossil fuels. I consider this a referendum on jobs and whether we as West Virginians are open for business. I thought we were all in on energy, and I'm going to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Is there debate on the amendment before the chair recognizes the sponsor to close debate on the amendment? Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 1st District McGeehan to close debate on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A little bit of a contentious debate for the last 45 minutes or so, and that's okay. We all have strong opinions one way or the other, it seems like, on some of these issues. But I put this amendment up because of a number of factors, and I guess I'll start with number one. It's been stated in here by several folks that have already spoken that are on one side or the other of the issue that this is, in fact, a startup company, which I'm not sure if it's the correct place or role for the state government to suddenly get into the business of some sort of, to speak informally, a venture sort of capitalist endeavor. Because startup companies pose significant risks, much higher risks. And I think that's the big distinction to the gentleman from Kanawha between this startup company and the companies he listed that are traditional companies that have been around for a long time, like Procter & Gamble, like Nucor, and like, I think he listed another one too. I can't remember, Toyota maybe. You know, these are companies that are well established, been around for a long time. Yeah, these are great deals. Nucor is headquartered in North Carolina. It's a great opportunity for us. And you know what? When we had that Nucor deal and we were discussing that, was it last year? It was widely disseminated, the economic impact report from WVU's College of Business, right? And I think that was mentioned by somebody. But you know, what strikes me as curious as there was another report for Form Energy done by the same group, by the College of Business and Economics over at WVU. Took me a while to get my hands on it. It was referenced a little while ago stating that by the time Form Energy gets to full production in the year 2029 with their promised 750, again, blue-collar factory jobs, the total economic output in millions, which would be $2.1 billion, is listed here. The funny thing, though, is if you start going through the report, it looks like it was done within maybe a day and rather haphazardly, because if you start dividing all the numbers, take total compensation on that same page that lists the total economic output, total direct employee compensation is $451 million for 750 direct jobs. Divide that. Do you think an average blue-collar factory worker is going to be making over $600,000 a year? If that's the case, sign me up, man. I'll resign right now, right? Even if you're charitable and you try to include, maybe there was an error and you included the indirect and induced impact jobs. You see the next column, 3,356. Do the division on that, you still, even if it's an error, to be charitable for this report, you still wind up with almost $200,000 a year in all of those jobs. So I wouldn't take this report very seriously. And just to, while I had the floor, back it up, the first year analyzed by this report was the year 2025, where Form Energy claims to create 178 direct impact jobs. And guess what the total employee payroll for those 178 jobs would be in the year 2025? That would be a little less than $200,000 per job. It's a little weird because typically when you establish a new startup enterprise at a new location, your personnel costs are front-loaded because what are you doing normally? You're hiring leadership, you're hiring management, you're hiring engineers, and those types of personnel typically are more expensive. Well, this report goes in reverse. By the time you get to full production, when you're hiring the entry-level positions, labor costs for employment or compensation, employee compensation goes up by over 300%. So I wouldn't trust this report too much. I'm not sure, I'm surprised that Deskins put his name on it. He actually does have a statement, and I have not seen this strong of a statement on top of a report that's come out of his desk at WVU. The second line to this report states, data for this study were provided by the West Virginia Development Office and were not independently audited by the authors of this report. Never seen that kind of strong, kind of CYA language in my life. That wasn't widely disseminated, not up front. I didn't get my hands on that, and then finally they started throwing it around. So I just wanted to make that point. You know, we also covered this argument about how this deal's structured so well. You know, there's performance metrics, and you got to hit this amount of jobs created before, you know, the next round of subsidies kicks in. I'm not sure if job is even defined in that memorandum. I haven't seen it. How long do they have to keep that job? But the one thing I want to point out is we're missing another piece of this, and that's opportunity cost. This is extremely valuable real estate. This is between 50 and 55 acres of property right along the Ohio River with barge and rail access. And we're finally getting it cleared out. And so if we dedicate it to this new startup that has all these federal subsidies being run by gentlemen that, if you've watched any of the YouTube videos or looked into their backgrounds or listened to the podcast they've appeared on over the last 2 years, you might wonder that, yeah, they probably own a couple very fine white lab coats, but I'm not sure they're the kind of people that want to potentially live in Weirton, West Virginia and manage 750 blue-collar factory workers in the long term. Looks like they might want to have an exit plan. And that's really the whole point with this amendment. And that's why I really am skeptical and I'm not sold on this, because there seems to be a lack of credibility amongst different parties. Because in West Virginia, yeah, someone said we're diversified, And someone's said that we have different areas that are interested in different things, but we're also in a way unified because we're one of the few states left that has some semblance of attachment to local community. And so when we have these people who don't share our values, it's almost like we're managing our home as some sort of depository instead of trying to preserve and maintain a great heritage that we should protect. All right, because there's more to the common good than simply the promise of money and wealth and jobs. If we reduce everything, if we reduce all prosperity to that, and we have no other criteria other than wealth, money, jobs, etc., where that logic leads to is exactly the logic that was brought out by the gentleman from the 40th. We could have pornography manufacturers come in, and you could easily, if that's the only criteria, market that just as much. Hey, we're going to employ 750 people here to manufacture pornography and any other type of tool that goes along with that industry. Or, how about this? You know what? We're going to go ahead and sink money into this new startup that's called a cat house. And guess what? We're going to hire 750 pimps. And guess what? All of their Harlems, they're going to have the best health care in the world. Free abortions for all. And it's going to be spin-off jobs left and right. And guess what? The total economic output on that, well, we'll just crunch some numbers here. It'll be $3 billion. And don't worry about the common good. Because by that point, we've reduced the common good to just a material worldview. Well, there is such a thing as a common good. And the reason why this enterprise violates that common good that we should hold so dear is because if you've researched it and you've looked into this, you'll realize that the people managing, operating, and raising the funds, along with the financial backers of this company, are intent on eliminating our way of life. They despise our way of life. And that's directly against the common good. So I'm not going to drag on anymore. I would just urge to vote yes for the amendment because the culture of our ancestors, that we should value, the wisdom of our ancestors that gets passed down generation after generation that we cling to, some of us in here, that shouldn't be taken lightly because that takes a lot of time to develop, but guess what? You can destroy that culture that our ancestors handed down to us in a moment. So I'd be pleased if you voted with me in the affirmative on my amendment. And Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
Debate on the amendment has been closed. Chair is informed by the clerk for the benefit of members who may be looking in the system. This is amendment number 2 for those who are looking in the system right now. So the question is on the adoption of the amendment. The roll call vote on the amendment is demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is, shall the amendment be adopted? Those in favor of adoption will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Okay, has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there are 25 ayes, 70 nays, 5 members absent. Less than a majority in the affirmative. Chair declares that amendment lost. The clerk will please report the next amendment.
Delegate Foster moves to amend the bill on page 3, section 1, beginning on line 47, after the word "the," by striking Economic Development Project Fund 349069 and inserting in lieu thereof the following: Water Development Authority Fund 3384.
Okay, the question is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Chair recognizes the sponsor, gentleman from the 20th, Delegate Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this amendment does is essentially move the $105 million from something that has been talked about much this day. I believe everybody's aware of the project that they're talking about. But what this does takes this $105 million and moves it to an area that will be much more helpful to our state. We've heard today already a statement about people not having water and sewer, not having the ability to get clean water. But what this bill does is moves it to the Water Development Authority, which would mean $105 million to go into municipalities and public service districts all around the state to help people maintain clean drinking water and provide that for those projects. And I would urge adoption.
The question again is on the amendment read by the clerk. Is there debate on this amendment? The gentleman from 97, Delegate Hardy, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the gentleman's amendment. I'd like to remind the body that last year during regular session, we created a fund during the session to be able to put money into the WDA for projects. And then when we came back in subsequently in a later special session, we funded $250 million into that. And there's money still sitting there that the WDA is working through and also working with the IJDC to get these projects out and get these done. And also, we are working on another proposed supplemental that will go into this year's budget. So I do not think that this is a wise way to spend this money or put this money, infuse it into the WDA. We've done a really good job of funding that, and I think that this is just another way to neuter this piece of legislation. So for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the gentleman's amendment.
The question is still on the amendment read by the clerk. Is there a debate on the amendment as read by the clerk? The gentleman from the 29th, Delegate Dillon, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. One of the chief objections that we hear to companies, businesses locating in different parts of the state is a lack of infrastructure, and one of the chief complaints of citizens throughout the state is lack of access to water or the water quality not being adequate. This would be a zero-risk approach to investing our state dollars, which came from tax sources and came from our severance tax largely, which if you look in the parts of the state we've discussed previously, the South in particular, we have quite a great need in infrastructure and water development, so I would firmly support this amendment. Thank you.
Again, the question is on the amendment read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment read by the clerk? Okay, if not, Chair recognizes the sponsor, gentleman from the 20th, to close debate on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would say there's been a lot of talk about mission statements across states. So I just wanted to give you a mission statement of the West Virginia Development Authority, or Water Development Authority, which is its mission is to provide communities in West Virginia financial assistance for development of wastewater, water, and economic infrastructure that will protect streams of the state, improve drinking water quality, and provide and protect the public health and encourage economic growth. And I would also assert, not only is this, as the gentleman just stated, a proven thing in this state to be able to provide water to people, you're also going to be providing jobs. If you put the same amount of money into the Water Development Authority versus this project, you'll create probably 3 to 4 times the amount of jobs as you would be in putting the money into this startup project. You're not going to have 700, you're probably going to have 3,000 to 4,000 jobs, and that's going to be developing water systems directly in your cities and in your public service districts across the state. So I would urge adoption, and I would also ask for the yeas and nays, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, debate on the amendment has been closed. A roll call on the amendment is demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is, shall the amendment be adopted? Those in favor of adoption of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Okay, has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there are 18 ayes, 75 nays, 7 members absent, less than a majority in the affirmative. The chair declares that amendment lost. The clerk will please report the next amendment.
Delegate Foster moves to amend the bill on page 2, section 1, line 22, by striking $115 million and inserting in lieu thereof $12 million. On page 2, section 1, line 26, by striking $127,147,273 and inserting in lieu thereof $24,147,273. On page 3, section 1, line 47, by striking $105 million and inserting in lieu thereof $2 million. And on page 3, section 1, beginning on line 47, striking Economic Development Project Fund, Fund 349069, and inserting in lieu thereof Sexual Assault Intervention and Prevention Fund within the Bureau of Public Health.
Okay, the question is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Gentleman's raised a point of order. Gentleman from the 79th will state the point.
This amendment is about sexual assault and not about economic development, so I ask for a ruling on whether it's germane.
Well, the chair did consult the amendment beforehand. It appears to only be the fund. It appears to only be the direction of the fund, so that it would be a germane amendment. The body could direct the money anywhere that it did choose. So the amendment is germane. The question is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Chair will recognize the sponsor, the gentleman from the 20th, Douglas Foster, to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I'd ask unanimous consent to withdraw the amendment.
Okay.
But I would ask to be recognized for a motion.
Okay, gentlemen, are there objections to having the amendment withdrawn? Okay, there are no objections. The amendment is withdrawn. Chair will still recognize the gentleman from the 20th, Douglas Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would just ask that the motion in question be divided, since it is second reading. And there's two separate appropriations in this bill, and I would ask that the motion be divided into two separate appropriations.
The gentleman's motion is in order. So the motion is that the bill be divided so as to consider separately the two parts of the bill. The motion to divide the question is in order at this time. If adopted, the effect of the motion is to create two separate bills, one that would pertain to each of the two halves of the bill. So at this time, for what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition? Gentleman 96.
Mr. Speaker, I move to table the motion.
To table the motion to divide the question?
Correct.
So the motion to table is not in order on the motion to divide the question. The motion to divide the question is an incidental motion. The motion to table is a subsidiary motion. The motion to divide does take precedence. At this time, the question is on the motion to divide the question so as to consider separately both parts of the bill. Does the gentleman from 20 is seeking recognition?
Yes, I cannot remember if the motion is debatable.
It is not.
All right, thank you.
It is not a debatable question. For what purpose does the gentleman from 97, Dr. Hardy, seek recognition?
Point of clarification, Mr. Speaker.
So
we're talking about bifurcation of the bill.
We are.
And if we did not want to bifurcate the bill, we would vote no on the gentleman's motion.
The gentleman's correct. Chair will treat that as a parliamentary inquiry. The gentleman's parliamentary inquiry is the answer is yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, again, are all members clear on the effect of the motion? Again, if the motion is adopted, the questions before the body will be bifurcated. The motion will, the bill will be divided. Those in favor of adoption of the motion to divide the question will please say aye. Aye. Those opposed will please say no. Okay, no's appear to have it. Roll call is demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question again is on the motion to divide the question. Those in favor of adoption of the motion to divide the question, in other words, divide the bill, will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Okay, has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 23 ayes, 71 nays, and 6 members absent. Less than a majority in the affirmative. Chair declares the motion to divide the question lost. Are there other amendments on the bill? Are there other amendments on the bill? Okay, if not, the bill will be advanced. Clerk will please report the next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3145, recognizing the Commission on Uniform State Laws as a presumptive provider of continuing legal education.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Are there other bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2075 to provide a means to classify when medications should be continued or stopped for patients.
That bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2899, repealing 2 sections of code relating to gas utility rates.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3111, creating infrastructure-ready jurisdictions.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3199, relating to removing the requirement that an ectopic pregnancy be reported.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3268, add protections for West Virginia residents who reside out of state for certain time periods from non-renewal of licenses and registration.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3306, relating to the organizational structure of the Office of Drug Control Policy.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3307, establishing the West Virginia Ireland Trade Commission.
The bill will be advanced. Leaves of absence, gentleman from the 96th, from the 61st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For delegates E. Pritt and Clark.
Are there objections to leaves of absence being granted? No objections are heard. Those leaves of absence will be granted. Introductions. Introductions, miscellaneous business. Gentleman from the 61st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move subject to announcements that the House adjourn until 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Are there announcements? Gentleman from the 96th. Excuse me, from the 61st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All bills are due in by tomorrow, and committee rules tomorrow at 8:45 a.m. behind the chamber.
Gentleman from 97, Doug Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Finance Committee will meet today, Thursday, February 9th at 4 p.m. in the Finance Committee room. The agenda is posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from 51st, Doug Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Judiciary will meet tomorrow immediately following floor session in the committee meeting room. The agenda will be posted. We have high aspirations to be able to conclude that meeting by noon. Stay tuned on that, but we will be meeting tomorrow immediately following floor session.
Lady from the 49, Doug Tully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet in the East Wing Committee room at 3, and the Republican members will caucus at 2:45. Repeat, 2:45 in the chair's office. Thank you.
Gentleman from 77, Doug Stowler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A point of inquiry.
Gentleman will state the point.
I spoke to you about Bill 2346. It slipped by that we wanted to make that effective from passage. It's very important to that bill.
Gentleman did. Your gentleman's correct. Gentleman's correct. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is the bill related to the shortage of bus operators. Are there objections to returning to further consideration of House Bill 2346 for purposes of an effective date? Clerk's correct. Are there objections to having the motion to adjourn withdrawn? Okay, there are no objections. The motion to adjourn is now withdrawn. Are there now objections to returning to further consideration of House Bill 2346? Okay, no objections are heard. Question again is on House Bill 2346, which has already passed. So shall I recognize the gentleman from 77th for a motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker. I would move that we make 2346 effective from passage.
Okay, the gentleman's motion is that House Bill 2346, again, this is the bill related to the declaration of a shortage of school bus operators, effective from passage. Those in favor of the gentleman's motion will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Okay, has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There were 90 ayes, 0 nays, and 10 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares House Bill 2346 effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate that result to the Senate. Okay, let's again, gentleman from the 61st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House adjourn until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Okay, are there announcements? Gentleman from the 12th, Dr. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There will be a correction on the Finance Committee meeting. It will not start till 4:30 today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 43rd, Dr. Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet tomorrow, Friday, February the 10th, 30 minutes following the floor session in the Education Committee room. The agenda will be posted. Furthermore, if Republican members are available, we will caucus in the chairman's office at 3:30. Thank you.
Let even the 4th, Dr. Storch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Economic Development and Tourism will meet immediately after adjournment today in the House Finance Committee room.
Gentleman 22nd, Dr. Limble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure will meet at 4 p.m. today, and Republican members will caucus at 3:30. We will be taking up a $75 million annual tax cut for the coal industry, and the agenda has been posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman 2nd, Dr. Zateslo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy and Manufacturing will meet today at 3 o'clock. The Republicans will caucus at 2:45 in the Judiciary meeting room. Both meetings are in the Judiciary meeting room.
Please be in order. We're almost there, I promise. Gentleman the 88th, Dr. Hillenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Veterans Caucus will meet today, delayed till 5 p.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room.
Gentleman 17th, Dr. Pinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your subcommittee on tourism will meet in the House Finance Committee immediately following the committee meeting on economic development and tourism. Again, your subcommittee on tourism will meet in the House Finance Committee immediately following the conclusion of the economic development and tourism committee meeting.
Gentleman 43rd, Dr. Tony.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, just to clarify, the Education Committee is tomorrow, 30 minutes following floor session. Republican members will caucus this evening at 3:30 if you're available.
Are there other announcements? If not, the question is on the motion that the House stand adjourned until 9 a.m. Those in favor will please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned until 9 o'clock tomorrow.